Chapter 973. Following the footprints left behind by Dugu Weiwei, Chu Xiu and the others continued forwards for nearly an hour. But along the way, they still hadn't encountered anything. Everything was barren. But along the way, besides the footprints, Lu Jianghu also dug out a grotesquely shaped skeleton, as if it were some sort of vicious beast. But, all of them had been slapped to death by Dugu Weiwei with a single slap. It was clear that nothing in this primitive devil cave could threaten him. But along the way, besides that strange tree that they didn't know whether it was an animal or a plant, Chu Xiu and the others didn't see a single living thing. This even made Chu Xiu and the others suspect that all of the living things here had been killed by Dugu Weiwei. Only that strange tree remained. Because of its tenacious vitality, it could still grow even after being smashed into a tree root. Just how big is Primitive Devil Cave? Chu Xiu couldn't help but ask. Wei Shuya thought for a moment and shook his head. No one knows exactly how big it is, but this place is very strange. The space inside is distorted, and if you keep walking in one direction, you won't reach the end. Instead, you'll come out from another direction. So with so many people entering, even if everyone goes in different directions, there's still a chance that they'll converge together. Just as Chu Xiu was about to say something, Lu Jianghu suddenly said, "There's something in front of us." Everyone focused their eyes and saw that what appeared in front of them was a deep and serene mountain valley that emitted an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Lu Jianghu said, "The footprints extend all the way into the mountain valley, but I can guarantee with my integrity that there are definitely some profound mysteries inside, and it might even be very dangerous. In the past, the church master was able to come out, but if it was us, we might not be able to. So, whether we go in or find a way to get out, it's up to you." Chu Xiu only hesitated for a moment before saying, "Let's go in." In truth, the treasures of the Primitive Devil Cave were secondary. Right now, Chu Xiu really wanted to know everything about Dugu Weiwei, including the traces he had left behind. Lu Jianghu shrugged and followed Chu Xiu inside. Some of the surrounding martial artists chose to retreat, but most of the righteous martial artists also chose to follow closely behind them. Chu Xiu was in front of them, and they had Ling Yunzi, who was in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, with them. What was there to be afraid of? Stepping into the valley, Chu Xiu and the others were instantly shrouded in darkness. It was true darkness, a darkness without any light. It was as if the valley had devoured all light. However, none of the people present were weak. Their perception was astonishing. Even if they couldn't see, they could still sense the path. Hence, they kept walking forward. However, as they walked, no one realized that everyone's perception was weakening. From 100 zhang, to 100 zhang, and then to a distance of a few inches around their bodies. In the end, it was completely suppressed, to the point that they couldn't even sense the people around them. But no one noticed, and they were still walking forward numbly. Chu Xiu's eyes were filled with darkness, and that feeling made him very uncomfortable. He waved his hand and threw the silk quilt covering his body aside. Rubbing his head, Chu Xiu stood up from the bed. The sunlight outside shone into the exquisite European-style bedroom, giving Chu Xiu a very familiar but also very strange feeling. Rubbing his head again, Chu Xiu pushed the door open. A middle-aged man in a tuxedo with his hair combed came over and said softly, "Young master, the game company has sent your customized holographic game helmet. Would you like to take a look?" "Oh. Let's go take a look." Walking downstairs, Chu Xiu took a delicate game helmet and played with it. He was a little annoyed. "Young master, are you going to try it now?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Forget it, get me something to eat first." The middle-aged butler was a little confused. The young master used to be most interested in this kind of thing. He had been talking about this game helmet for a long time. Now that it was finally delivered, why didn't he seem to be in a good mood? Angry after waking up? But as a butler, his biggest obligation was to satisfy everything the master needed. In less than 10 minutes, a steak had been sent to Chu Xiu's table. Chewing the medium-rare, juicy steak, this feeling was very familiar, but the knife in his hand gave him an even more familiar feeling. Did I play games too late last night and not get enough sleep? Chu Xiu frowned. Since he got up, there was always a feeling of annoyance shrouding him. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. At this time, there was a sudden doorbell outside. After a while, the middle-aged butler led a young man in his 30s, dressed in a decent suit, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, and neatly combed hair. Chu Xiu seemed to vaguely remember that he was a trusted confidant of his second brother. What was his name again? I clearly saw him some time ago, why can't I remember? The young man walked to Chu Xiu's table and looked down at him condescendingly, without the slightest respect that a young master of the Lin family should have. Young master, Mr. Lin said that he doesn't care if you eat, drink, and play outside, but if you use the name of the Lin family to offend people outside, that is your fault. Last time at the cruise party, Mr. Li's father is Mr. Lin's business partner. Mr. Li was very angry. Because of you, a business worth hundreds of millions might be affected, and Mr. Lin is also very angry. But no matter what, you are still a member of the Lin family, and Mr. Lin will help you deal with this, but please don't go out during this time. The Lin family can tolerate useless people, but we can't tolerate people who spoil the family's reputation and drag us down. Chu Xiu listened to all this expressionlessly, then suddenly waved at the young man. Come here, come closer. The young man frowned, but still took 2 steps forward. He was puzzled. What do you want? As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu grabbed his collar and pressed his entire head onto the table. I really don't like it when someone looks down on me and talks to me. The young man was just about to struggle when the knife in Chu Xiu's hand fell heavily. With a poochie sound, it pierced through the young man's neck. In an instant, blood spurted out, splattering on Chu Xiu's face. The middle-aged steward was scared silly, and he stared at everything with his mouth agape. But Chu Xiu didn't care, stabbing the young man's neck again and again until the young man's body was too weak to resist, not even twitching. Only then did Chu Xiu throw the young man's body to the side. Touching the blood that had splattered on his face, Chu Xiu actually put it into his mouth and sucked it. He shook his head and said, everything else is similar, except for one thing. The taste of blood is wrong. The expression on the middle-aged steward, who was scared silly, completely changed. He revealed a puzzled expression and asked, why is it wrong? This is the taste of blood in your memory. Chu Xiu said lightly, it is the taste of blood in my memory, but this is the taste of the blood of a martial artist in my memory. How can the blood of an ordinary person contain such great power? The middle-aged steward said in annoyance, so that's how it is. But it's not that I'm not perfect enough, it's that you're too strange. You're the only person I've ever seen with 2 completely different sets of memories. Chu Xiu immediately frowned. What did he say? He had 2 sets of memories in his body? Everything about his past life didn't just involve memories. If he said that he had 2 souls, or that his soul and body didn't match, Chu Xiu could understand. But he said that he had 2 sets of memories. Everything about his past life didn't leave any traces. Only memories? This seemed to be similar to some of the possibilities that Yuan Ji had analyzed for Chu Xiu in the past. You, what exactly are you? Chu Xiu didn't delve into the matter of memories. Instead, he was very curious about the thing in front of him. Chu Xiu's current mental strength and spirit were already extremely strong. It was extremely difficult to make him fall for it. In the end, Chu Xiu had fallen for it unknowingly. Even at the beginning, he only felt a little irritated and uncomfortable, but he didn't notice anything wrong at all. What really made him wake up completely was the blood. In terms of personality, the Chu Xiu of his past life and the Chu Xiu of this life were basically 2 different people. Everything about his past life was like a memory that was about to disappear into thin air. In his previous life, the young master who only knew how to endure and was treated as trash by others, who only knew how to eat, drink, and have fun was already dead. When had the Chu Xiu of this life suffered such humiliation? The personality in his subconscious affected Chu Xiu. No matter how real the illusion was, it couldn't affect Chu Xiu's subconscious. Therefore, the thing in front of him didn't expect that Chu Xiu would directly kill people, and through the difference in blood, he completely reacted and got rid of the illusion. The thing said, "I'm not a thing. I'm an inner demon." Chu Xiu was stunned. He didn't seem to expect that the other party would say everything just like that. Inner demon? A martial artist's inner demon? How can such a thing have a physical body? How can it have consciousness? Of course, Chu Xiu knew about inner demons. As long as one was a martial artist, they would have to face inner demons in their cultivation. However, most people could suppress them. Those who couldn't would either go berserk and suffer a backlash in their cultivation technique, or they would become more and more extreme in their actions and lose control of their own hearts, causing them to make many wrong choices. The situation would worsen. However, inner demons originated from martial artists. Without martial artists, how could there be inner demons? The inner demon spread out its hands and said, "I don't know what happened either. My previous master died here about 8,000 years ago. When he died, his soul disappeared, and his inner demons dispersed. However, it seems that because this place is special, I didn't dissipate. Instead, I stayed here. Later on, people would come here from time to time. As long as they entered this place, their inner demons would appear. However, those inner demons didn't have the same consciousness as me. Instead, they were eaten by me. The more I ate, the stronger my abilities became. I could even take the initiative to invade people's hearts and set up scenes. You're very strange. You have inner demons, but your inner demons have merged with you. You are a demon." Chapter 974. Heart demons were very strange. At least, Chu Xiu had never heard of a heart demon that could continue to live after a person died. This primitive devil cave was truly strange. Even in this kind of place, a heart demon could actually transform into a living being. Even Chu Xiu didn't know how to describe this thing. It didn't even have a physical body. Or rather, this entire valley was its physical body. In fact, Chu Xiu could already break away from this thing. Heart demons were just heart demons. As long as Chu Xiu wasn't confused by the illusion in front of him, he could easily break out of this place and return to the outside world. However, Chu Xiu had always been the kind of person who wouldn't do anything without benefits. Everything in the primitive devil cave was formed naturally. Therefore, these strange things might seem very dangerous to others, but in fact, they might be useful. For example, the evil tree that could eat people. Although those fruits that looked like human heads looked very strange, what if they were refined into elixirs? Would there be any strange effects? Previously, Chu Xiu wanted to take it back and let Feng Buping study it. However, the people of Chunyang Dao sect acted too quickly and actually burned it. This heart demon in front of him was the same. If he took it out, would there be other effects? Chu Xiu had seen many strange things. He had also seen some non-human creatures. However, this was the first time he had seen something as smart as this heart demon. It could even think and communicate with people normally. The expression of the heart demon suddenly changed. "You really are a freak. Your demonic nature is deep. You even have ideas about me." This was the illusion left behind by the heart demon. Naturally, it could feel what Chu Xiu was thinking. However, after so many years, no one had this kind of idea. Although everyone had a heart demon in their heart, some people with a strong will could still resist it and not be eroded by the heart demon. Therefore, most people who passed by this valley could survive. But even those who were able to survive immediately fled as soon as they broke free from the illusion of the heart demon. They were anxious to leave this damned place. Who would be like Chu Xiu, a thief who did not leave empty-handed and actually had designs on him here? Xinmo coldly snorted and said, "But don't even think about it. It's useless. I can't even get out myself. How can you take me out? I can't trap you. At most, I'll just eat someone else." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "I can't take your body out, but I can still take a part of it. The heart demon is formless and formless, so it will stay in my heart forever." The inner demon cursed inwardly. However, at the next moment, the illusory realm collapsed. Boundless inner force and true fire enveloped it, forcing the inner demon into the deepest corner of Chu Xiu's mind. Seeing this scene, the inner demon was dumbfounded. It really didn't expect Chu Xiu to play such a trick. All the memories and knowledge of the inner demon came from the warriors that it had devoured. But Chu Xiu's situation could be said to be unique. The inner force and true fire could temper the primordial spirit. Naturally, it also had the power to imprison the inner demon, which was similar to mental strength. But after a normal warrior stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm, there would be no inner force and true fire left in their body. But Chu Xiu was different. At the same time, he also cultivated the true fire spirit refinement realm. From time to time, he would use the true fire in his body to temper his body. It could be said that in this world, only two people, Chu Xiu and Chenqing Di, could use this method to trap the inner demon. After trapping the inner demon, Chu Xiu directly tore the illusion with the power of the primordial spirit and left. The inner demon was formless and formless. Chu Xiu had only trapped a part of it. At this time, the others were also immersed in the illusion. Originally, Chu Xiu thought that he would be the first to break out of the illusion. Who knew that the result would be somewhat beyond his expectations? Senior Qing from Longhu Mountain Celestial Master Abode was even faster and also woke up. After seeing Chu Xiu, Senior Qing was a little stunned. It seemed that he didn't expect Chu Xiu to be able to break out of the illusion so quickly. People in the diabolism killed too many people. Most of them were extreme, so it was easier for them to fall into the trap of the inner demon. And he was a person who was almost in the grave. What else could he not get over? That was why he wasn't affected by the inner demon. In his opinion, Chu Xiu was a demon who was already famous in the pugilistic world at such a young age. His inner demon should be even stronger. He didn't expect that the speed at which he broke out of the shackles of the inner demon was also not slow. However, Senior Qing didn't say much. He formed a thunder seal and in an instant, a dazzling lightning flashed in the pitch-black valley. In the valley, when the crowd heard the thunder, most of them woke up and looked around in shock. Senior Qing released the thunder seal near the righteous side. Chu Xiu and the rest were already quite far away, so they didn't wake up. Looking at Mei Qinglian, Lu Jianghe, and the rest, their expressions were clearly not right. It was obvious that they had sunk deep into the illusion. Chu Xiu didn't delay and immediately formed a seal. In an instant, the great technique of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul shifting formed a spiritual storm that swept out, waking everyone up. They hurriedly walked out of the valley. When they were completely out of the evil valley, everyone let out a long sigh of relief. All of them had a look of lingering fear. The inner demon had silently eroded the deepest part of their hearts. This was something that no one had expected. Even Ling Yunzi, who was in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, had fallen for it. After all, the realm was the realm, and the state of mind was the state of mind. Although Ling Yunzi was in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, he really wasn't as open-minded as that Senior Qing. Of course, if they were trapped until the end, there should be many people who would break free of the illusion. Don't underestimate the warriors present. Whether it was the righteous path or the demonic path, they were all elite experts. Perhaps they had used more time than Chu Xiu and Senior Qing, but the illusion was after all not perfect. The inner demon was only an inner demon, not their own. After a long time, someone would eventually notice that something was wrong. Now that they had left the valley, Chu Xiu also retracted the inner force fire in his mind. He had already sensed that the inner demon and the power within the valley had been severed. A part of the other party had been taken away by him. The inner demon had already turned from the appearance of the old housekeeper into a wispy black fog. There was no anger in its voice, only some surprise. I didn't expect that you would really take away a part of me. But this is also good. Since I was born, I haven't seen anything else. The more I see, the more perfect my illusion will become. You're still thinking about this? I'm afraid you won't have the chance in the future. Oh yes, 500 years ago, did you see a warrior who was also from the demonic path? He should be very strong, the strongest person you have ever seen since you were born. Although the inner demon was born in the human body, it was not a living creature. It did not feel surprised or angry. Pulling people into the illusion and devouring their inner demons was just an instinctive action. Even when communicating with it, there was no need to beat around the bush. It was enough to speak directly. Sure enough, the inner demon did not even think about it and said, I have seen him. He was also a very strange person. I entered his state of mind, but strangely, I found that he didn't have any inner demons. I even entered the deepest part of his state of mind, but in the end, I couldn't find any loopholes. I couldn't get any memories, so I could only give up. Hearing this, Chu Xiu was even more surprised. So Dugu Weiwei's state of mind had already reached this level? Even the power of this inner demon could not affect him at all. At this time, the others were still around, so Chu Xiu did not continue to discuss these issues with the inner demon. Instead, he directly led everyone forward to explore. However, they had only taken a few steps when a strong wave of demonic aura came. Everyone's expressions changed, and they immediately spread out and walked forward. In less than half an hour, a deep pool had already appeared in front of everyone. The most strange thing was that there were black chain-like things around the deep pool. However, upon closer inspection, they were actually stone pillars that were covered with strange patterns. They were like iron chains that spread out in all directions, and the boundaries could not be seen at a glance. Those stone pillars were definitely formed naturally, but whether it was a coincidence or something else, these stone pillars and iron chains formed an extremely strange natural formation, constantly absorbing power from unknown places and filling the pool. With the lesson from last time, everyone was much more careful this time. After investigating for a while and confirming that there were no abnormalities in this place, everyone walked to the edge of the pool and looked down. What they saw gave everyone a huge fright. They saw that the bottom of the pool had been completely filled with demonic aura, forming a small lattice below. There were actually more than 10 warriors trapped in the small lattice. Some were bald, some were wearing Daoist robes, and some were obviously diabolism warriors. All of them were trapped here. Under the pool, their perception seemed to be blocked. No one noticed that there was someone above the pool until someone subconsciously looked up and saw the person above. That person then shouted excitedly, 800 years. Finally, someone is here again. Upon hearing this, the people under the pool suddenly became excited. They looked up and shouted, quickly find the source and cut off the primordial mageweth. Save us. However, whether it was Chu Xiu or the people from the Chunyang Dao sect, none of them moved. They just looked at them without blinking. There were dangers everywhere in the primitive demon's cave. They had just encountered such a strange thing, so how would they dare to let so many unknown people out? Only God knew whether they were humans or something else. Moreover, with the strong demonic aura in the pool, even their perception was blocked, so they could not detect the aura of the people below at all. Su Yan from the Great Light Temple frowned and said, everyone, don't be in a hurry to shout. Who are you and why are you trapped here? One of the sword-wielding warriors saw that they had not moved and shouted angrily, "We are your ancestors." Chapter 975. Although Su Yan was from the Vajra school, he was considered to have a good temper in the great Guangming temple. However, no matter how good his temper was, he could not take it when someone pointed at his nose and called him his ancestor. Therefore, Su Yan's expression immediately darkened. However, at this moment, an old monk with white hair and beard laughed bitterly and said, "Almsgiver Jean is too anxious and didn't make it clear. Strictly speaking, we are indeed your ancestors. If any of you are from the 9 great clans, it's not wrong to call them ancestors. Umitba, although this poor monk's senses have been completely blocked, if I'm not wrong, you should be from the Vajra school and you cultivate the furious Vajra Heart Sutra. Am I right?" Su Yan frowned and said, "Who are you guys?" The old monk sighed and said, "This poor monk's dharma name is Yuan Guang." Hearing this, Su Yan was stunned at first. Then, he suddenly thought of something and cried out, "The patriarch of the Yuan generation?" However, the last patriarch of the Yuan generation had already passed away 800 years ago. Monk Yuan Guang laughed bitterly and said, "It's been 800 years. That's about how long it's been. I didn't expect that we haven't gone crazy after being trapped for 800 years. This can be considered a miracle." Hearing the other party admit it, Su Yan was still a little doubtful. Lived for 800 years? Even existences at the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm could not live for that long. He was also afraid that there was something strange down there that had stolen their memories and so on. Su Yan did not say anything. Monk Yuan Guang laughed bitterly and said, "You guys are cautious enough, much more cautious than this poor monk and the others. If we had been like you guys back then, we wouldn't have ended up in this state." Saying that, Monk Yuan Guang directly revealed a few secrets about the great Guangming temple. These things had been passed down from generation to generation, and some of them even Su Yan could not remember clearly. Hearing him recite them as if they were his family treasures, Su Yan immediately believed him. At this moment, Yuan Guang said again, "If you guys don't believe me, the people here who are related to you are also locked up down there. You can ask them at will." Everyone present hurriedly shook their heads and said that there was no need. It was enough for Yuan Guang to verify it. It seemed that they could no longer use their true qi after being locked down below, so these words were spoken in public and not transmitted. The great Guangming temple was a big family with a big business. Even if it were some secrets, it would not be a big deal to reveal it after 800 years. But who knew what other forces had done in the past? If these words were spoken in public, it would be embarrassing enough. "Ancestor Yuan Guang, what's going on with you guys?" Yuan Guang smiled bitterly and told them what had happened. This matter began more than 800 years ago, when the primitive demon cave had opened. The opening of the primitive devil cave had also attracted a lot of people to enter. Yuan Guang and the others also followed the tracks of those devil Dao martial artists and entered. They didn't know if they were lucky or unlucky. They came from a different direction, so they didn't encounter the evil thing called the heart devil. However, this deep pool was even more terrifying than the heart demon. The formation in this deep pool was naturally formed. It gathered devil qi from all directions and condensed a natural devil bead from the bottom of the deep pool. The devil Dao people wanted it, but the righteous Dao people didn't want the devil Dao people to get such a treasure, so the two sides fought fiercely. As a result, at this time, everyone accidentally fell into this deep pool. This deep pool gathered such a strong devil qi, but because of the natural formation, it did not have any lethality. Instead, it formed an extremely delicate balance. Of course, these people present could not leave. Moreover, when they were trapped here, time seemed to have stopped. Their strength was no longer consumed, but it also did not increase. Even moving was very difficult. So these people present could be said to have lived for 800 years, but it could also be said that they had been plants for 800 years. In these 800 years, most of their time was spent sleeping. If they did not sleep, it was easy to turn them into lunatics during this period of time. After waking up, the people of the righteous Dao and devil Dao began to curse each other. When they were tired of cursing, they continued to sleep. Only then did they persevere. At the side, Lu Jianghu curled his lips. He felt that it was no big deal. He had been trapped in the blood-soul bead for 500 years. Although it was less time than them, there were so many people here. At least they could curse each other to relieve boredom, right? He did not even have a single person to talk to. Su Yan asked, after so many years, has no one entered the primitive devil cave? Yuan Guang smiled bitterly, there has been, but only one. Who? They did not save you. Yuan Guang shook his head, not only did they not save us, but they also took away the natural devil bead we were fighting over. That person, I think he is called Duga Weiwei. Hearing this name, everyone immediately fell silent. No wonder, if it was Duga Weiwei who appeared, he definitely would not save them. At this time, Su Yan directly said, Ancestor, how should we let you out? Can we just directly destroy the demonic patterns on the ground? Yuan Guang hurriedly shook his head, absolutely not. These demonic patterns have formed a natural formation. Once the balance is destroyed, the demonic energy within the pool will naturally erupt. At that time, not only will we die, even if you are closer, you won't be able to resist it. If we want to break the formation, we can only go to the source of the demonic patterns and cut it off. At that time, the demonic energy will no longer gather, and the demonic energy within the pool will dissipate into the depths of the devil cave. At that time, we will naturally be able to leave. At this moment, Yuan Guang suddenly glanced at Chu Xiu and the others. However, to cut off the source of the demonic energy, we need to use demonic energy of the same source to cut it off. Otherwise, even if you use the strength of the Buddhist sect, it will still destroy the natural demonic patterns. At that time, we won't be able to resist it either. Hearing Yuan Guang say this, Su Yan looked at Chu Xiu and instantly frowned. Would Chu Xiu help the people of the righteous path? At this time, the trapped demonic path martial artists were already in an uproar. One of them, an old man with a hooked nose and a gloomy expression, looked at Chu Xiu and said, Kid, which sect are you from? Did you hear what this old monk said? Go find the source of the demonic patterns, cut it off, and let the ancestor out. Don't worry, there's no need to be afraid of these people from the righteous path. Let them out first, and the ancestor will deal with them together in the future. After being trapped here for 800 years, whether it was the righteous path or the demonic path, there was only one word in their hearts at this moment, and that was get out. So, regardless of whether they would also release their enemies when they were released, the most important thing was to get out first. Chu Xiu looked at the hook-nosed old man, his face expressionless. He hated it when people spoke to him in such an overbearing tone. Ancestor? Which sect's ancestor are you from? Perhaps it was because they had been trapped here for too long, the old man's reaction had slowed down. He did not notice that there was something off about Chu Xiu's tone. He thought Chu Xiu was asking about his background and trying to curry favor with him. Therefore, the hook-nosed old man said arrogantly, I'm the Ghost King sect's Grand Elder, Si Wuya. How's the Ghost King sect doing now? Has it become the leader of the 8 major sects of the Fiend Path? Wei Shuya explained through voice transmission, before the Kunlun Devil cult rose to power, the 7 sects and 8 factions had many Fiend Path forces. Hence, the 7 sects referred to the Righteous Path sects while the 8 factions were Fiend Path sections. Later on, the Kunlun Devil cult almost unified the Fiend Path. 90% of the Fiend Path forces were under the Kunlun Devil cult. Hence, it's no longer appropriate to call them the 8 major sects of the Fiend Path. That's why Wind Sweeping Tower reorganized them into the 7 sects and 8 factions. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. He suddenly felt that the name Ghost King sect sounded familiar. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "The leader of the fiend path? After being trapped here for 800 years, the Ghost King sect's lineage is long gone." Si Wuya was taken aback when he heard this. Then, he roared, "Impossible. The Ghost King sect was so powerful in the past. We even had a supreme expert in the mystic enlightening realm. How could it be destroyed in just 800 years? Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Is the mystic enlightening realm very powerful? Since you've met Dugu Weiwei, have you heard of the Kunlun devil cult?" Si Wuya and the other cultivators from the noble and fiend paths who were trapped here were taken aback. The Kunlun devil sect? Wasn't Kunlun Mountain the Heavenly Gates territory? Why was there a fiend sect here? Chu Xiu laughed. 800 years have passed, and the world has changed. We're all frogs at the bottom of a well. Chu Xiu looked at Si Wuya coldly and said, "The pugilistic world is no longer the same as it was 800 years ago. Since we're all frogs at the bottom of a well, let's keep a low profile. I don't like it when people talk to me in a commanding tone. By the way, speaking of the Ghost King sect, I seem to recall that the last group of disciples of the Ghost King sect died in my hands." When Si Wuya heard this, he was taken aback. Then, he shouted madly, "You damn brat! I'll kill you and refine your nascent divinity into a vengeful spirit." Chu Xiu didn't care about him at all. In any case, he wouldn't let this group of people out. Apart from the fact that these old men were taking advantage of their seniority, he was also annoyed by their identities. The Great Light Temple, the Chunyang Dao sect, and the other factions were here. If they let Yuan Guang and the others out, it would be equivalent to them gaining more strength. However, what about people like Si Wuya and the others? In the past 800 years, the fiend path had undergone earth-shattering changes. Perhaps 90% of the fiend path cultivators could no longer find their sections. Most importantly, their sects might have been destroyed by the Kunlun devil cult. After all, when the Kunlun devil cult rose to power, they had killed many from the noble path. However, they had also killed many to unify the fiend path. Moreover, 500 years ago, Dugu Weiwei had visited them and taken the Khanate devil orb from them. With Dugu Weiwei's strength, he could have let these people out and killed the people from the noble path. However, he did not do that. Clearly, Si Wuya and the others must have offended Dugu Weiwei with their foul mouths. Therefore, Dugu Weiwei did not care about them at all and left them to fend for themselves. Chapter 976. Chu Xiu did not know what Dugu Weiwei's personality was like. However, if Dugu Weiwei looked down on someone, Chu Xiu would look down on him as well. In any case, since he could not use them, he would just let them fend for themselves. When they saw how stubborn Chu Xiu was, they had no other choice. If they could not get out, it would be pointless to threaten him. Hence, Si Wuya and the others turned to look at the other fiend path cultivators and said loudly, "We'll definitely reward anyone who lets us go. Even if our sects no longer exist, we'll still have our cultivation methods and the treasures we've left behind." The fiend path cultivators present were tempted when they heard this. The fiend path cultivators who were trapped here used to be elders or even sect leaders of major fiend path sections. They were all influential figures in the fiend path. Although the fiend path was not as glorious as the Kunlun devil cult when it dominated the Jianghu, it was not as down and out as it was now. They must have been very wealthy back then. Chu Xiu didn't want these things and didn't care for them, but they were very tempting to them. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu turned to look at the fiend path cultivators and said coldly, "Everyone, if anyone dares to let these old fellows out today, don't blame me for not giving them face. The righteous path sects are watching from the sidelines. I really don't want to kill my own people." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone present felt a chill run down their spines. Those who had dealt with Chu Xiu before were not surprised. However, those who had not dealt with Chu Xiu before were in disbelief. Everyone said that Chu Xiu was crazy. They did not believe it in the past, but now, they believed it. This Chu Xiu was a lunatic. They did not have the slightest doubt that Chu Xiu would dare to kill someone. Previously, in front of those warriors from the Great Light Temple, Situ Chi had only questioned Chu Xiu once, and Chu Xiu had acted without saying anything. From this, one could see Chu Xiu's character. However, some people were still somewhat dissatisfied. Official Chu, these people are the seniors of my demonic Dao lineage. Releasing them can also increase the strength of my demonic Dao lineage. Why not? As they spoke, they looked at Wei Shuya. They knew that Wei Shuya had always been loyal to the Hidden Devil clan. Wei Shuya would never let go of an opportunity to strengthen the Hidden Devil clan. However, Wei Shuya acted as if he didn't see everyone's gazes. Chu Xiu sneered, "En Mo is a demon, and Ming Mo is also a demon. These guys are people from 800 years ago. If we let them out, are they from the En Mo clan or the Ming Mo clan? Patriarch Dugu has been here before. Since he didn't let them out, I naturally won't let them out either. Some words, I will only say it once. If someone treats my words as farts, then don't blame me for kicking his head like a ball." Being threatened by Chu Xiu in such a manner in front of everyone, a faint trace of anger appeared on the faces of everyone present. Some of these people were also the leaders of the Hidden Devil clan. They could still vaguely remember that when the Hidden Devil clan had a meeting in the past, Chu Xiu didn't even have the right to sit. He could only stand behind Wei Shuya and listen to his orders. In the end, who knew when Chu Xiu actually had this kind of strength? With this kind of power, he could shake the entire Hidden Devil clan by himself. They looked at Shang Tianliang and Chu Xiu's subordinates. Now was not the time for Chu Xiu to need the Hidden Devil clan. Instead, the entire Hidden Devil clan needed Chu Xiu. The people present were not idiots. None of them wanted to fall out with Chu Xiu at a time like this. No matter how much resentment they felt, they had no choice but to swallow it. Si Wuya and the others were dumbfounded when they saw this. They did not expect that after 800 years, the pugilistic world, or rather, the fiend path, would become so chaotic. Since they were trapped in the deep pool, their powers were sealed, including their senses. That was why they could not see Chu Xiu's strength. However, based on Chu Xiu's appearance, they could tell that he was definitely a young martial artist. In the end, this young man was able to suppress the elders of the fiend path and silence them. Was the fiend path's pugilistic world so chaotic now? The people from the Great Light Temple were helpless when they saw this. They even hoped that there would be fewer internal conflicts in the Hidden Devil clan. That way, they could release Yuan Guang and the others. Yuan Guang said in surprise, "Since this person is unwilling to make a move, you can look for familiar fiend path martial artists to make a move." Why must you look for him? Could it be that the fiend path martial artists who entered the primitive devil cave are that young man's subordinates? Su Yen was taken aback when he heard this. Familiar fiend path martial artists? The Great Light Temple and the fiend path are irreconcilable enemies. Why would there be familiar fiend path martial artists? Colluding with the fiend path is a great taboo. Yuan Guang was even more shocked when he heard this. We're just looking for an acquaintance. An exchange of benefits is fine. It's not like we're betraying the sect's interests. Why is it a great taboo? These two people were separated by 800 years, but there was a huge difference in their worldviews. The reason for this was because of Dugu Weiwei and the Kunlun devil cult. Since ancient times, the three lineages of Dao, Buddhism, and demonic had never been able to coexist peacefully. Thus, it was normal for the three factions to attack each other. But in the pugilistic world 800 years ago, everyone did not act as if they had just met their father's murderer. They did not immediately rush forward to kill. This was because at that time, the strength of the three lineages of Dao, Buddhism, and demonic was evenly distributed. While they attacked each other, they also kept each other in check. Thus, they suffered the least losses. However, when Dugu Weiwa appeared in the world, he disrupted this balance. The Kunlun devil cult dominated the pugilistic world. Their demonic flames filled the sky and their might made people feel fear. After going through that era, nobody was willing to go through it again. Hence, 500 years later, although the Daoist, Buddhist, and demonic sects still opposed each other, the Daoist and Buddhist sects joined forces to suppress the demonic path. The noble path and the demonic path stood against each other. The relationship between the two factions was unusually sensitive. Naturally, Yuan Guang and the others were unaware of this. Su Yan had to use a lot of effort to briefly explain this to them. While Yuan Guang was disappointed, he also felt a deep sense of helplessness. His own people had successfully found them, but due to various reasons, they could not save them. This was very awkward. Hence, Su Yan could only say, "Don't worry, Patriarch. At most, we'll capture a disciple from the evil Pole sect or the Five Venoms sect and have them forcefully break the formation." When Si Wuya and the others saw the Great Radiance Temple's monks were trying to help their own people, they could only curse at Chu Xiu. Naturally, their curses were useless. As long as they were trapped in this deep pool, they would be like vegetative people. Apart from their mouths and brains, they could not use any other part of their bodies. While the others were still hesitating, Chu Xiu had already left with his people. As they walked, Chu Xiu said, "There's no need to look for Dugu Weiwei's footprints for now. Let's follow the devil veins and look for the source of the devil veins." Lu Jiang he was taken aback. "Didn't you say that you're not going to save those old men?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Naturally, I don't plan to save those old men. I can tell from their attitude. It'll be troublesome to save them. I'm interested in the devil veins. These devil veins are formed by the heavens and the earth. The power contained within them is extremely pure. Absorbing them will bring unimaginable benefits." Shang Tianliang scoffed and said, "You won't be able to imagine that you'll be blasted to death by that immense power. You've seen the power in the pool for yourself. It can even freeze time. Even if you only absorb the power from one devil vein, it'll be enough to blow you up. Even I wouldn't dare to do that." Chu Xiu said calmly, "If I can't digest it, I'll just suppress it." "How will you suppress it?" "Of course, I'll use the Dharma to suppress the devil. After all, I'm also a person who has read Buddhist scriptures." As Chu Xiu's voice fell, the Dharma around him was solemn, and the scorching Buddha's light shrouded him. Standing in front of Wei Shuya and the other Diabolism people, it was as if a traitor had sneaked into the Yinma clan. Shang Tianliang was stunned, but then he snorted and said, "Even if you use Buddhist martial arts to suppress it, haven't you considered the conflict between the two kinds of power in your body? If the power of this devil qi is very weak, you can completely suppress it and slowly refine it. However, the power in this devil vein is so strong. The more you suppress it, the more dangerous it will be." Chu Xiu said slowly, "Of course, I know that it's better to disperse it than to block it. Taoism is natural. If you can't block it, you can use the power of Taoist connotation to circulate it and disperse it into the world. Anyway, the power in this devil vein is so strong that you don't have to worry about wasting it." As he spoke, wisps of Taoist connotation circulated in Chu Xiu's hands. It turned out to be the most authentic Taoist method. Shang Tianliang's eyes widened and he didn't say anything. He had forgotten that Chu Xiu was one of the few people in Jianghu who could cultivate the martial arts of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism to the extreme. The three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism reached the same goal by different means. If one kind of power couldn't do it, then there would be no problem if the three forces combined. He looked back and saw that at this time, the people of the righteous Tao were still struggling over how to save them and find their own patriarch. The other people of the Diabolism were also struggling over whether they should save them or not, and if they could bear the price of offending Chu Xiu after saving them. Taking advantage of this time, Chu Xiu and the others walked along the devil vein for more than 10 miles before they found the source of the devil vein. The stone pillar that looked like a chain extended into a hole that glowed with endless black light. This was the source of the devil vein. Extracting the power from the devil vein didn't mean cutting it off, so it couldn't let those people go. As for whether Chu Xiu's extraction of power would break the balance of the devil qi in the deep pool and blow them up, that was not something that Chu Xiu could care about. Taking a deep breath, Chu Xiu extended his own power into the devil vein on the stone pillar. In an instant, a powerful wave of devil qi surged over. In an instant, Chu Xiu's eyes were dyed black. But following that wave of power, Chu Xiu vaguely saw an image. God knows how many years ago, there was also a person who was doing the same thing as Chu Xiu, absorbing the power of the devil vein. It was just a back view, but Chu Xiu immediately recognized that person. It was Dugu Weiwei. Chapter 977. Amidst the endless waves of demonic energy, Chu Xiu actually saw an image left behind by Dugu Weiwei. This surprised Chu Xiu. To be more accurate, this image shouldn't have been left behind by Dugu Weiwei. Rather, it should have been subconsciously recorded by the demon marks. Although Chu Xiu didn't know the principle behind this, in a place like the primitive demon cave, it was normal for something like this to happen. It's just that Chu Xiu looked carefully and discovered that Dugu Weiwei's goal seemed to be different from his own. Chu Xiu's goal was to absorb the power of the demon marks. But after Dugu Weiwei absorbed a portion of the power, he stood up and said as if he was talking to himself, "Wrong, the source isn't here." Such a powerful demonic energy, yet Dugu Weiwei absorbed it as he pleased and cut it off as he pleased. Moreover, he didn't seem to need this power at all. Did he enter the primitive demon cave in search of an source? Before this, everyone thought that Dugu Weiwei entering the primitive demon cave was an accident. The primitive demon cave suddenly appeared, and as the demon religion master, he naturally entered. But now, it seemed that from the moment Dugu Weiwei entered the primitive demon cave, he had been looking for something. He was looking for an source. From the very beginning, he knew what he was looking for. Of course, the current Chu Xiu didn't have the energy to think about what Dugu Weiwei was looking for. Dugu Weiwei could easily withstand this demonic energy, but Chu Xiu couldn't. Even with his current bodily strength and cultivation realm, it only took 3 breaths of time for him to no longer be able to control this demonic energy. Moreover, Chu Xiu could be considered to be quite lucky. His luck was quite good, as the demonic rune he had encountered had some of its power extracted by Dugu Weiwei. Thus, the impact of the demonic qi was much weaker. If he had chosen any other mageweth, not only would he not have been able to see this scene, but he would also have to bear the impact of the devil qi that had been condensed in the mageweth for 800 years. That would not be pleasant. Seeing that he could no longer control the devil qi, Chu Xiu's entire body shone with Buddha's light. The Buddha's light suppressed the violent devil qi in his body, allowing it to circulate smoothly in his meridians and dantian. However, it was just as Shang Tianliang had said. It would have been fine under normal circumstances, but the power of the demonic aura was too great now. While the power of the Buddhist cultivation technique was suppressing the demonic aura, it was also colliding and exploding in Chu Xiu's body. If it were anyone else, they would have already exploded and died. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu's body was surrounded by Daoist connotation. The violent aura was melted by the Daoist connotation and turned into the purest aura that flowed into his body. In an instant, Chu Xiu's body was surrounded by black fog. Seeing this scene, Chu Xiu immediately said, "Gather around me and absorb this devil qi. It is pure devil qi that has been refined by me. You can absorb it directly." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Mei Qinglian and the others immediately gathered around and began to absorb the black fog around Chu Xiu. After the pure devil qi was refined by Chu Xiu, it was no longer as violent as before. They could absorb it to their heart's content. If they could not absorb it all, they could just let it dissipate between heaven and earth. Anyway, there was a lot of devil qi here. Among the devil qi, Lu Fengxian absorbed the most. Although there were many people with a higher cultivation level than him, he and Chu Xiu both cultivated the 9 heavens demonic golden body. After Chu Xiu refined the devil qi, it naturally had a trace of the same power. It was easier to refine it. Moreover, Lu Fengxian's physical strength could also accommodate so much power. Shang Tianliang stood at the side with a helpless expression. Although he had reached the heaven and earth elemental opening realm, who wouldn't want free power? But he didn't know any demonic cultivation method. It was useless to absorb the devil qi. He even had to use his own power to suppress it. The gains did not make up for the losses. The cultivation methods passed down by the Shang clan's ancestors were actually quite diverse, but there were no cultivation methods related to demonic cultivation methods. Pang, who had been in the martial suppression hall for a long time and learned some demonic cultivation methods. Of course, they were not the core ones. Just as Chu Xiu and the others were refining the devil qi with all their strength, the righteous sects and other demonic cultivators also rushed over. They couldn't find a safe way to break the devil qi for the time being, so they could only leave for the time being. The righteous sect's fear of Chu Xiu was quite strong. It could even be said that it was second only to Yi Xiaonan. If Yi Xiaonan represented the peak combat power of the entire demonic lineage, then Chu Xiu represented the peak combat power of the entire demonic lineage in the future. It might be an exaggeration to say that Chu Xiu was invincible under the heaven and earth elemental opening realm, but it was certain that few could match him. If Chu Xiu used his full strength, he could even exchange a few blows with those on the sovereign list. When the others saw that Chu Xiu was actually absorbing the power from the devil qi, their expressions changed. The righteous sects immediately looked back, fearing that Chu Xiu was messing around and causing a complete explosion at the deep pool, killing all their ancestors. After seeing that nothing happened at the deep pool, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. But then everyone's expression darkened. They couldn't let Chu Xiu continue absorbing like this. They could sense how strong the power in the devil qi was, but Chu Xiu was actually able to absorb it. This was simply terrifying. If he could absorb all the power in this demonic pattern, how terrifying would he become? The righteous sects didn't dare to think too much. Ling Yunzi said directly, "Do it. Stop Chu Xiu." As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Yunzi's body shone with pure yang qi, and his figure rushed out. Shang Tianliang sighed. He had come this time to be Chu Xiu's fighter. He was born to be busy. Until now, he hadn't gotten any benefits at all. He was just here to be Chu Xiu's fighter. But he still had to make a move. Shang Tianliang's fist landed, and the devil qi around him gathered into a storm that swept over. In this way, Shang Tianliang actually had the demonic aura of an overlord. In fact, Shang Tianliang's martial arts inheritance, in addition to the close combat techniques he had honed in Green Capital, had many other martial arts that borrowed the power of heaven and earth. In this primitive demon's cave, the most abundant thing was the surging devil qi. So when Shang Tianliang made a move, it was like a monstrous demonic flame. Ling Yunzi frowned, and the pure yang sword in his hand pointed out. In an instant it was like the sun had descended. A spot of pure sunlight even illuminated the pitch-black primitive demon's cave. It was clearly visible from more than 10 miles away. The two heaven and earth mystic opening realm powerhouses clashed, and the power was simply earth-shattering. And this time, Shang Tianliang didn't fall into a disadvantage. On the contrary, he was still fighting back and forth with Ling Yunzi. Ling Yunzi had only stepped into the heaven and earth mystic opening realm after his last fight with Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu had destroyed his heart demon. It could be said that he had just stabilized this realm. He was the youngest of the heaven and earth mystic opening realm powerhouses, and his foundation wasn't deep. Moreover, in a place like Primitive Demon's Cave, the surroundings were filled with gloomy devil qi. Even if Ling Yunzi was in existence at the heaven and earth mystic opening realm, he couldn't mobilize the surrounding aura that was incompatible with him. So his combat strength was naturally greatly reduced. On the other hand, Shang Tianliang didn't have such concerns. So the more they fought, the greater the advantage Shang Tianliang had. In the end, not only were they fighting back and forth, but they were even able to suppress Ling Yunzi. It was just that the others weren't so optimistic. As the other righteous path martial artists rushed over, Wei Shuya and the others naturally couldn't continue absorbing the devil qi. They could only attack. Wei Shuya blocked Su Yun. Lu Fengxian, Mei Qinglian, and the others also tried to resist, but there were just too many people on the other side. Especially on Su Yun's side, Wei Shuya couldn't hold on for long. After all, Su Yun was already standing at the peak of true fire spirit refinement realm. If Wei Shuya's physical strength was still at its peak, even if he couldn't defeat Su Yun, he could still fight with him for a while. But now, he couldn't resist more than a few moves. At this time, not only did the demonic path martial artists not help, but they also showed a strange look in their eyes. Weren't you, Chu Xiu, arrogant before? Weren't you arrogant? Now, you're still being beaten to the ground. They weren't interested in helping Chu Xiu. On the contrary, they were very interested in the power in the Mageweth. Seeing that Chu Xiu was absorbing the power in the Mageweth, a real pellet state martial artist ran to the side. There was also an end of the Mageweth there. He also wanted to absorb the power in it like Chu Xiu. As a result, he had just made his move when an incomparably terrifying and violent demon qi suddenly erupted. In less than a breath of time, that martial artist was completely smashed by that violent demon qi, leaving not even his bones behind. Everyone present shuddered. Even if it was the existence of true fire spirit refinement realm, they probably couldn't withstand the explosion of this power. Looking at Chu Xiu's side, although everyone didn't know how Chu Xiu withstood the momentary explosion of power, there were so many Mageweths in front of them. Only the one that Chu Xiu was absorbing was the safest. Some of the demonic path martial artists present also showed some greed in their eyes, but no one made a move. On one hand, there were still people from the righteous path. It was fine if they didn't help Chu Xiu, but now they were adding insult to injury. It seemed a bit unreasonable. Of course, the most important thing was that they were also afraid of Chu Xiu's revenge in the future. At this time, Situ Chi's eyes turned. He didn't speak, but he encouraged Han Xiuhong, a demonic path martial artist who was a rogue cultivator, to make a move. Han Xiuhong lived in seclusion in the land of West Chu all year round, and his friendship with Situ Chi was not bad. Most importantly, he had never been in contact with Chu Xiu before. Situ Chi had been attacked by Chu Xiu several times, and he also knew that Li Jiaodi died in the hands of Chu Xiu. He still had some fear of Chu Xiu, so he didn't intend to be the one to stand out this time. Chapter 978. Situ Chi didn't dare to take the lead, so he wanted to encourage others to take the lead. Han Xiuhong was an old man dressed in colorful clothes. He wasn't from the Central Plains, but from the Miao territory. The people of the Miao territory rarely left the land of West Chu. Han Xiuhong wasn't interested in the Yinma clan, and he was even less interested in joining the Bright Demons. He even had a small grudge with the moon-worshipping cult, so most of the time, he didn't even leave his own territory, let alone fight with the Central Plains warriors. However, even if Han Xiuhong wasn't good at fighting with others, he wasn't an idiot. Hearing this, he directly asked, "You're much more famous in the Demon Dao clan than I am. Why don't you say that?" Situ Chi said bitterly, "Brother Han, it's not like you didn't see Chu Xiu's attitude towards me. We already have enmity between us. You're not a member of the Yinma clan, but I still want to mingle with them. The Yinma clan is no longer the Yinma clan of the past. Chu Xiu is powerful, and the others are just a pile of loose sand. They can't fight against Chu Xiu. In the past, Old Wei was still considered fair, but now, look at how biased Old Wei was towards Chu Xiu. If I speak now, I guarantee that Chu Xiu will definitely target me in the future. Seeing Situ Chi acting pitiful, Han Xiuhong didn't fall for it. He only sneered, if I speak, will Chu Xiu not target me? Situ Chi pointed at the demonic pattern and said, Brother Han, look around. Who isn't tempted by the demonic pattern? If you make a call, the others will definitely follow. The law doesn't punish the masses. Can Chu Xiu kill all the people of the Demon Dao clan? Moreover, you're not a warrior of the Central Plains, nor are you from the Yinma clan. After you get the benefits, you can directly hide in the Miao territory. Can Chu Xiu chase you all the way there? Hearing Situ Chi's words, Han Xiuhong was a little tempted. At this time, Situ Chi added fuel to the fire, saying, Brother Han, I heard that you are preparing to refine the 1,000-year bug goo. That thing is not as simple as it seems, and it also has a high requirement for one's cultivation. Otherwise, it might backfire on one's body. Wouldn't you be more confident if you absorb and devour the devil chi and improve your cultivation base? Situ Chi then pointed at the others and said, Brother Han, you've seen it for yourself. If no one says anything and no one takes the lead, these people definitely won't make a move. If we wait any longer, when Chu Xiu completely absorbs the power of the entire Mageweth, we won't have a chance anymore. After being incited by Situ Chi from all sides, Han Xiuhong also didn't have a direct understanding of Chu Xiu. He clenched his teeth and stood up, saying, Everyone, the primitive demon cave belongs to all of us demonic path cultivators, not to Chu Xiu's people. Before, Chu Xiu threatened us, not allowing us to rescue those demonic path seniors. After all, our ancestors aren't among them. But now, Chu Xiu wants to monopolize this Mageweth for himself. How can we tolerate this? As Han Xiuhong's voice fell, he was the first to rush out. Everyone had a heart of blind obedience. If Han Xiuhong hadn't taken the lead, the others might not have made a move. But now that they saw Han Xiuhong make a move and offend Chu Xiu first, the others naturally had less apprehension. In the demonic path, there were only a few people like Qin Chaoxian who hadn't made a move. Qin Chaoxian had his own personality. His Scarlet Drill Demon sect had formed its own faction, so he didn't want to offend Chu Xiu and the others. However, he also didn't want to be too close to them. As for the others, although they didn't belong to Chu Xiu's side, they had some friendship with Wei Shuya. At this time, they really couldn't hit him while he was down. At this time, Chu Xiu was still absorbing the surging devil qi. When he saw the demonic path cultivators also hit him while he was down, a cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He had already guessed that this group of people definitely wasn't that honest. The righteous sect still cared about face, but the demonic path cultivators would fall out with each other in the face of benefits. Previously, Chu Xiu's attitude was so domineering. One reason was because he already had the qualifications to be domineering, and the other was because he wanted to use this domineering attitude to deter others. But now, it seemed that the effect wasn't that good. If deterrence was really useful, there wouldn't be so many killings in the pugilistic world. In the face of benefits, there would still be wave after wave of people. Originally, Chu Xiu's side was already very difficult to resist. Now that the demonic path cultivators were hitting him while he was down, Lu Fengxian and the others really couldn't resist anymore. You're courting death. Chu Xiu shouted out explosively. With a wave of his hand, the devilish qi within the devilish marking was completely absorbed into his hand, and then the violent devilish qi surged like a large spear as it swept out. Almost all the cultivators present were too weak, especially those who dared to attack Chu Xiu. Almost all of them had the strength of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Although they had never worked together before, they were facing Chu Xiu at the same time. All of them displayed their respective strengths, and as their astral energies erupted, they could be considered to have great teamwork. They blocked the surging and violent demonic chi at almost the same time. With a loud bang, the devil chi dissipated. Everyone present revealed a trace of horror in their eyes. Chu Xiu was simply a monster. How could his strength be so great? Although Chu Xiu didn't fully absorb the devil chi and the demonic patterns because of the disturbance, it was enough to make Chu Xiu's strength increase by 30%. The devil chi in Chu Xiu's eyes swirled as he looked around. He was looking for Han Xiuhong. He didn't know this person, but since this person wanted to stand out, then he had to pay the price. Han Xiuhong, who was in the crowd, suddenly shivered when she saw Chu Xiu. At the same time, she cursed Situ Chi. Didn't they say that the law didn't punish the masses? Why was this Chu Xiu still staring at him? The devil chi in Chu Xiu's hand swirled, and a huge devil chi longbow condensed in his hand. The triple annihilation city arrow directly shot towards Han Xiuhong. The world annihilation fire burned fiercely on the arrow. The power was simply terrifying. "Save me!" Han Xiuhong shouted. In the face of this arrow, which was once used by Dugu Weiwei and was famous in the pugilistic world, and Chu Xiu was still famous in the pugilistic world, he really didn't have the guts to face it head-on. The other devil cultivators weren't idiots. At this time, if they still watched Han Xiuhong be killed by Chu Xiu and didn't do anything, they could only blame themselves for being stupid when Chu Xiu finally defeated them one by one. Therefore, the moment Chu Xiu made his move, the few people present immediately intercepted him. Kun Mo was from the western regions, and his devil cultivation carried the characteristics of the western region's martial techniques, which were incomparably strange. Black-red devil flames rose and bloomed, and there was even the roar of a demon god. Although the devil flames were instantly destroyed by Chu Xiu's triple annihilation city arrow, some of the devil flames still remained on the arrow. Although they couldn't extinguish the world annihilation fire on the arrow, they could continuously devour the power within it. Situ Chi held a scimitar in his hand. The scimitar's blade was actually forged from eerie white bones. With a slash, eerie ghost chi mixed with boundless devil chi descended. The moment it collided with the triple annihilation city arrow, countless evil ghosts were torn apart, but they still devoured the power of the arrow. However, along the scimitar, Chu Xiu's world annihilation fire rushed toward Situ Chi along the scimitar's blade. Situ Chi was so frightened that he hurriedly retreated. The aura around his body erupted, and he used all his strength to resist the world annihilation fire. Seeing that Chu Xiu's arrow was already in front of him, Han Xiuhong roared angrily, and the gang chi around his body surged into his colorful robe. In an instant, countless goo insects shining with golden light appeared and collided with the triple annihilation city arrow. There was actually a loud sound of metal clashing. Although the power of Chu Xiu's arrow had already been reduced by more than half by Kun Mo and Situ Chi, it was still not something that Han Xiuhong could easily block. After one arrow, almost half of the Vajra goo that Han Xiuhong had painstakingly raised died, and this made his heart ache. However, this was not the end. Chu Xiu seemed to have his eyes fixed on Han Xiuhong, and his figure rushed straight towards him. A Devil Dao warrior who was a rogue cultivator intercepted him. In an instant, a devil sound pierced the ears, and even the surrounding space emitted violent fluctuations. However, in the next moment, an endless Buddhist light bloomed around Chu Xiu, and the Vairocana Dharma form appeared, suppressing evil and subduing demons. With a loud bang, a palm landed, and the Devil Dao warrior vomited blood as he retreated. At the same time, Kun Mo's figure strangely appeared behind Chu Xiu. Boundless black and red devil flames boiled and burned, and actually directly ignited Chu Xiu's Vairocana Dharma form. However, in the next moment, the Vairocana Dharma form that bloomed with scorching Buddhist light around Chu Xiu instantly transformed into the great black sky demon god burning with black devil flames. "You also play with fire?" But do you think the flames of a firefly are worthy of competing with the sun and moon? In an instant, the great black sky demon god's third eye shone with a black light, and it was an extremely strange scene. Black itself was lightless, but the black light in the great black sky demon god's third eye was dazzling. Boundless apocalyptic flames enveloped Kun Mo, and in an instant, his so-called devil flames were completely extinguished. He let out a strange cry and spat out a bunch of Western region SA words as he frantically dodged to the side, resisting the corrosion of the apocalyptic flames. After fighting 2 people consecutively, Chu Xiu's power was simply shocking. On the other side, Situ Chi stabbed the white bone scimitar into the ground. He formed seals with his hands, and countless vengeful spirits and evil ghosts struggled out of the ground, dragging Chu Xiu's primordial spirit in an attempt to temporarily restrain him. "Quick, attack!" Situ Chi shouted at the others, wanting to take advantage of the fact that Chu Xiu was trapped to take down Chu Xiu. 2 demonic martial artists immediately rushed towards Chu Xiu, but in the next moment, Chu Xiu laughed maniacally. The battle blade in his hand fell, and everything seemed to freeze in the void. In the next moment, regardless of whether it was demons, ghosts, or evil secret techniques, they were all destroyed by Chu Xiu's blade. Chapter 979. Chu Xiu's strength was frighteningly powerful to be able to withstand the attacks of so many demonic Dao powerhouses alone. Situ Chi's expression completely changed. He had calculated so much, but the only thing he had not expected was that Chu Xiu's strength had reached such a terrifying level. He was practically treating ordinary warriors of the same level as him as nothing. Since stepping into the true fire spirit refinement realm, Chu Xiu had actually only fought twice. The first time was when he sparred with Shang Tianliang, and the second time was when he fought with Su Yun. However, when he fought with Su Yun, only Sheng Beixian saw it. At that time, the demonic Dao had not arrived yet. This time, everyone finally saw Chu Xiu's strength. It was simply terrifying. Seeing Chu Xiu continue to walk towards Han Qiuhong, this time, it was not just the demonic Dao people. Even Su Jing and Su Du attacked Chu Xiu. Of course, they were not helping Situ Chi and the others. Right now, Chu Xiu's demonic might was indeed extremely shocking. The other demonic Dao people were not scary, but Chu Xiu was. Once Su Du and Su Jing left, the 2 true fire spirit refinement realm warriors from Merchant City who had fought with them earlier immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, the 2 of them had fought with Su Du and Su Jing. Although they had not been defeated, it had been a one-sided suppression. Merchant City's warriors were suitable for bullying the weak, but when facing warriors of the same level, they did not have much of an advantage. The only advantage they had was that they were more resistant to beatings, so they would not lose so quickly. Chu Xiu's personal attraction. With such a huge force surrounding him, it made Mei Qinglian and the others feel much more relaxed. Seeing that Su Jing and Su Du were also attacking him, Chu Xiu could not help but sneer. Is the Great Light Temple also joining forces with the demonic Dao now? Who was the one who said that they hated evil? Su Jing didn't say anything, but Su Du just chuckled and said, "Chu Xiu, don't blame us for this. Buddha once said that the higher you stand, the harder you fall. You have taken away all the benefits. The demonic path doesn't like you, and we fear you. If we don't attack you, who will we attack? Keep a low profile. Good for you, good for me, and good for everyone." Su Jing's face darkened. Buddha didn't say that. Don't talk nonsense, hurry up and attack. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Jing formed a lotus seal. In an instant, countless golden lotuses bloomed around Chu Xiu. However, none of them moved. Instead, they sealed off all possible escape routes around Chu Xiu. On the other hand, Shudu's body shone with the Buddha's light. One Buddha's Dharma, Vajra's Dharma, and Wisdom King's Dharma were released at the same time. They looked magnificent, but in reality, there was no sense of solemnity in the Dharma. Instead, they seemed a little messy. However, although it was messy, the large number of Dharma came crashing down. Every one of them had different powers, and their power was extremely shocking. Su Jing and Shudu's attacks were clearly different from the others. They worked well together and complemented each other. In addition, they were the first seats of the Temple of Great Light's 3 great meditation halls. They were considered the upper echelons among martial artists of the same level. The two of them could match up to several people attacking Chu Xiu earlier. Moreover, the other demonic path martial artists were not idle at this time. They kept looking for opportunities to attack. If they failed, they would escape. If they could not escape, they would be hit by Chu Xiu's blade. That would not feel good. Among the righteous path martial artists present, the only ones who did not make a move were Senior Qing and Xian Longzi from Mount Longhu. Seeing that the others were fighting fiercely, yet he could only watch from the side, made Xian Longzi scratch his ears and cheeks. He was the kind of person who could not stay idle, let alone in such an occasion. He could only be a spectator. I say, Senior Qing, are we just going to watch and not make a move? Senior Qing said calmly, make a move? Who are we going to fight? That Shang Tianliang of the elemental heaven and earth realm? I still want to serve the old celestial master for a few more years. This old man will not do something I have no confidence in. As for fighting with Chu Xiu, haven't you heard of the saying, the fist is afraid of the strong and the young? This old man is already so old, and this young man is so fierce. If I accidentally take a few punches from him, it will not feel good. Xian Longzi secretly curled his lips. They said that having an old person at home was like having a treasure. In the end, the 2 elders of Mount Longhu only knew how to take advantage of their seniority. From the first time Xian Longzi saw this Senior Qing, he had been half dead and looked even older than the old celestial master. In the end, that guy from the hidden devil lineage called Yuan Tianfang came to provoke him, but he was still sent flying with a slap. He was very fierce. Senior Qing said in a low voice, Xian Longzi, you are good at everything, but your heart can't calm down. That is why the old celestial master handed the celestial master abode to Zhang Daoling to manage, and not you, who is more talented. Xian Longzi curled his lips and said, I don't care even if it was given to me. Zhang Daoling can endure loneliness, but I don't have that patience. Senior Qing glared at Xian Longzi and said, you talk back. The old celestial master meant for you to be more steady. A smart person takes 1 step and thinks 10 steps ahead. Can you be that smart? If you can't do it, then before you take this step, think about it 10 times and see if you can take this step. This is not the time for the celestial master abode to make a move. The real show is still behind. Use your strength on the blade. It is not worth it to fight and incur grudges here. Hearing Senior Qing's lecture, Xian Longzi had a helpless expression. He could only stand there and watch Chu Xiu fight there. To be more precise, it was him, fighting a group of people. The masters of Taoism and Buddhism took turns to besiege him. This kind of treatment was not something that ordinary people could have. After a series of fierce battles, Chu Xiu's side was also angry. Chu Xiu really didn't care about those demonic martial artists. They were just a motley crew. No wonder the demonic lineage was in decline now. Apart from the moon-worshipping cult, there were not many powerhouses among the Immortal lineage and those demonic martial artists. They were all mediocre people who were stuck in the old ways. Although in the eyes of others, those who could step into the real pellet state or the real fire spirit refinement state were amazing people, in the eyes of Chu Xiu, they were simply a group of mediocre people. The real problem was that Su Jing and Su Du joined forces. Although these 2 people couldn't hurt Chu Xiu, they cooperated well and caused a lot of trouble for Chu Xiu. Holding the unique heavenly saber in his hand, Chu Xiu's body was shrouded in an extremely mysterious saber intent. Before the saber slashed out, Su Jing's expression suddenly changed, and he immediately said, "Retreat." Su Du was stunned. He didn't understand what Su Jing meant. It wasn't until Su Jing shouted to retreat that he prepared to retreat. Although in the Great Light Temple, Su Du often liked to argue and was famous for it, he also knew when he could argue and when he couldn't. Although Su Du didn't find anything wrong at the moment, Su Jing cultivated the way of cause and effect. His perception was quite amazing. Since Su Jing said to retreat, he naturally had a reason to retreat. However, the moment Su Du retreated, Chu Xiu's saber finally fell. When the saber came out, the mountains and rivers changed color. This was a saber that Chu Xiu had yet to fully control. To be more precise, he didn't even understand it. This was the saber that Chu Xiu saw in the illusion of the blood-red handkerchief. Back when he was fighting with Kong Dongming, he used the power that was similar to Dugu Weiwei to use this saber. In the end, the vague feeling of this saber had even been imprinted in Chu Xiu's bones. However, the truth was that he still hadn't completely understood it. Even so, the power of this saber was beyond everyone's imagination. The saber light that seemed to cover the sky and earth fell. Everywhere it passed, everything shattered. Countless lotus petals that emitted Buddhist light shattered in an instant. Su Du's countless Buddhas and Vajras also began to crumble. The speed at which it happened was even faster than the speed at which Su Du escaped. Moreover, the other demonic path warriors who had secretly attacked him were even worse off. Previously, they had all heard Su Ci's shout to retreat, but they didn't care or believe it. They weren't like Su Du, who had confidence in their senior brother. Under Chu Xiu's saber, all martial arts techniques, weapons, and treasures were all shattered. Some people couldn't even resist the powerful saber intent. Their internal organs were directly penetrated by the saber intent. Blood gushed out and sprinkled on the ground like dripping rain. After this saber, Chu Xiu didn't continue to use it. Instead, he secretly let out a long sigh. Last time when he was fighting with Kong Dongming, the power that Chu Xiu used to use this saber came from the power of Dugu Weiwei's indestructible Sky Demon Book. However, now that Chu Xiu was asked to condense that power again, he couldn't do it. Therefore, this saber still consumed his own power. Previously, Chu Xiu didn't expect that this saber would consume so much power that it was beyond his imagination. Of course, the effect was also extremely shocking. After this saber, everyone had retreated, and some were even seriously injured. They could no longer cause trouble for Chu Xiu. After stabilizing his own aura, Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and walked toward Han Xiuhong. At this moment, Han Xiuhong was also in a miserable state. In front of him was a group of golden goo worms, but they had all been cut into two. Those venomous insects were the Vajra venomous insects that he had meticulously reared. Adult venomous insects were comparable to divine weapons. Once a large number of Vajra venomous insects appeared, even a martial artist from the Temple of Great Light who had cultivated the golden body would be bitten through. Seeing Chu Xiu walk over, Han Xiuhong retreated in fear. At the same time, a large group of goo worms flew out from his body. As a Miaojiang warrior who specialized in the Gu Dao, Han Xiuhong's true combat power wasn't strong. Not including the goo worms, he was even weaker than the warriors from Merchant City. However, it was a pity that these little bugs were not very useful to Chu Xiu. With a wave of his hand, the world-extinguishing fire bloomed. No matter what kind of goo worm it was completely burned into ashes by the world-extinguishing fire. With one step, Chu Xiu arrived in front of Han Xiuhong. The powerful aura suppressed him so much that he couldn't even lift his head. Han Xiuhong couldn't help but beg for mercy. "Official Chu, spare my life. If it wasn't for that bastard Situ Chi who bewitched me, I would never dare to make an enemy out of you, Official Chu." Chu Xiu said expressionlessly, "He bewitched you and you believed him. You don't have any opinions of your own. You're just a good-for-nothing. What's the point of living? As Chu Xiu finished speaking, the world-extinguishing fire had already burned Han Xiuhong's body. As he wailed miserably, he was completely burned to ashes. Chapter 980. Since entering the primitive devil cave, this was the first time that a true fire spirit refinement realm existence had been killed. But what was even more bizarre was that this true fire spirit refinement realm existence had actually died at the hands of his own people. Seeing the scene of Chu Xiu killing Han Xiuhong, the righteous martial artists were stunned. They really didn't expect that Chu Xiu was not only ruthless when killing others, but also merciless when killing his own people. As for those of the demonic path, they felt a chill in their hearts. Ever since the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult, the demonic path had banded together. Regardless of the relationship between them, at least they didn't kill each other like before. At least they knew that they had to protect their own face in front of the righteous martial artists. In the end, this Chu Xiu had no qualms about killing his own people. And at this time, Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Situ Chi. The murderous intent in his eyes made Situ Chi shiver. Situ Chi had caused trouble for Chu Xiu more than once or twice. Previously, it was just a small matter, so Chu Xiu couldn't be bothered to kill him. But this time, he had touched Chu Xiu's bottom line. Just as Chu Xiu was about to kill Situ Chi, an incomparably powerful fluctuation suddenly came from afar. The power of that fluctuation was so strong that it shot straight into the sky. The flowing underground river in the sky began to explode, and waves of powerful qi attacked, actually forming a huge waterspout in midair. At this time, a monstrous demonic aura shot into the sky. A figure appeared in the boundless demonic aura. It was Yi Xiaonan. Floating in midair, Yi Xiaonan waved a hand. In an instant, the heavens fell and the earth cracked. The underground river that seemed like the sky was forcibly torn apart by Yi Xiaonan. Endless gloomy water surged down like the waves of the vast sea. There were even some ferocious-looking fish struggling within, but they were all minced into minced meat. When the current number 1 demonic path person made his move, his power was simply earth-shattering. Mending the heavens with one hand, shaking the might of heaven and earth. Who could resist? Amidst the surging waves of the underground river, a Buddhist chant resounded throughout the world. The shadow of a Buddha condensed behind Su Ci, resisting the impact of the water and illuminating the entire space. It was as if sunlight had risen from the ground. On the other side, a white-robed monk was treading on the water. Lotus petals bloomed one after another, yet another golden lotus bloomed within each golden lotus. The golden lotuses that filled the sky kept devouring the water of the underground river. It was as if the palm-sized lotus petals contained another world. This was not the end. Amidst the flood, Shen Baochen, who was in the sword hut, unfurled the secret treasure of the sword hut, the 10,000 sword catalogue. In an instant, countless sword qi tore through the sky. Its power was shocking. Yan Zhi of the Windcloud Sword Mound held a huge iron box in his hand. When he opened it, a broken sword soared into the sky. The powerful sword qi could shatter mountains and seas, tearing apart the boundless underground river. If Si Wuya and the others were here, they would have recognized the sword. Right now, the most powerful swordsman in the world should be the Sword Saint of the East Sea, Kang Dongming, who had defeated the 3 major sword sections 500 years ago. The most powerful swordsman in the world was the Sword Saint, Gu Qingsheng, who had transformed into a sword spirit and successfully injured Dugu Weiwei. 1,000 years ago, the most powerful swordsman in the world was not the Sword Saint, but the Sword Saint, Yi Feiyu. With one person and half a sword, he could fight against the 5 major sword sections. In the world, the swordsman reigned supreme. From the beginning, Yi Feiyu's sword was only half a sword. It was a broken sword. However, with this broken sword, Yi Feiyu was already revered in the world. In Si Wuya's era, Yi Feiyu's status was not lower than Gu Qingcheng's. All these years, no one knew where Yi Feiyu's remains were buried. Now, it seemed like Yi Feiyu's choice was the same as most people. She chose to be in the Windcloud sword mound with the 10,000 swords. The battle between Yi Xiaonan and the others was earth-shattering. Even from 100 miles away, one could feel the powerful fluctuations. Everyone present looked at each other. Even Chu Xiu did not have time to find trouble with Situ Qi. He turned and rushed in the direction of Yi Xiaonan and the others. The righteous path martial artists didn't want the demonic path lineages to obtain too many benefits here, but they didn't want to start another great war here. Thus, before they entered Primitive Demon Cave, Su Ci and the others hadn't intercepted them, and Shen Baochen and the others hadn't revealed their trump cards. But now, no one knew when Luo Mo had entered the Primitive Demon Cave. Shen Baochen, Yan Ji, and the others had used all their trump cards to fight Yi Xiaonan. What did this mean? It meant that Yi Xiaonan had discovered a great treasure, a treasure that could affect the relationship between the righteous and demonic lineages. This was why everyone was so anxious to stop Yi Xiaonan. With the treasure in front of them, they couldn't care less about the grudges and other messy matters from before. Ling Yunzi didn't even want to stop Chu Xiu. Instead, he headed straight for Yi Xiaonan to stop her. Although Chu Xiu made them very wary, Chu Xiu could not be compared to Yi Xiaonan in terms of threat to the entire righteous path. As the current number one person of the demonic path, Yi Xiaonan was also the person most likely to reach the same level as Dugu Weiwei in the entire demonic path. Just as everyone was heading in the direction where Yi Xiaonan and the others were fighting, two people slowly entered the primitive devil cave. These two people were none other than Chu Xiu's old acquaintances. One was Heaven Gate Divine General Kuang Xieyue, and the other was Lin Songlong. As they stepped into the primitive demon cave, Kuang Xieyue frowned. The aura here is really uncomfortable. The sect master said that there is a special key here and he wants us to take it back. But, this place contains such powerful demonic energy, so how could a sky-split key be born here? Do you think sect master made a mistake? Lin Songlong frowned and said, Kuang Xieyue, what are you trying to do? This time, it was enough for me to come alone. Why did you have to beg the sect master to come along? Don't say stupid things like you're worried that I can't get it and want to help me. When did you, Kuang Xieyue, become so kind? Although the 9 Heaven Gate Divine Generals were not normal, in comparison, Lin Songlong was the most normal one. At least when it came to carrying out a mission, he was very normal. Divine Lord Luo did things crudely and thoughtlessly. Although Kuang Xieyue had a brain, he was intermittently crazy and would often do things that didn't matter, causing mistakes. But although Lin Songlong's fear of trouble made people speechless, at least he would always put the mission first. Just like last time in the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult, Lin Songlong's goal had always been very clear. He had come for the sky connecting key. Once he obtained it, he would immediately escape. It was that simple. This time, when Lin Songlong came to the primitive demon cave, he didn't want to compete with others for anything. He had only come for the sky-split key. He alone was enough, but Kuang Xieyue had insisted on coming with him. Kuang Xieyue chuckled and said, You and I have been brothers for dozens of years. Don't say such hurtful words. This time, when the primitive demon cave reappears, there will even be heaven and earth profound understanding powerhouses from the various sections. I only came with you because I was worried about you. Lin Songlong stared at Kuang Xieyue, his face expressionless, as if only a ghost would believe him. There had never been any brotherly feelings between the Heavenly Gate's divine generals. They weren't fellow disciples either. Others didn't understand the inner workings of the Heavenly Gates. In truth, the competition within the Heavenly Gates had always been extremely cruel. Once a disciple was chosen to enter the Heavenly Gates, they would be taught a unified cultivation method in the early stages. Then, once they had successfully cultivated it, they would compete with each other. Only the victor would have the qualifications to enter the mystic realm to cultivate and complete all sorts of missions. Moreover, while completing these missions, killing was not forbidden. After obtaining the mission rewards, they could exchange them for various cultivation methods. Then, they could enter the mystic realm and continue killing. Of course, this wasn't enough for one to become one of the 9 great divine generals of the heavenly gates. There were only 9 great divine generals, and they could only be the strongest 9. Thus, one had to ensure that they were one of the strongest 9 heavenly gates disciples. Only then could one become one of the 9 great divine generals. This was also why, although the heavenly gates martial artists came from the same sect, their cultivation methods were different. Moreover, their combat strength was also extremely astonishing. The trials and slaughters they experienced were no weaker than those of the outside world. In fact, they were even stronger. Kuang Xieyue squinted his eyes and said, "Don't look at me like that. Alright, I just wanted to see an old friend. I really didn't expect Chu Xiu to still be alive. Speaking of which, old Lin, you're a little too much. You clearly know the grudge between him and me, yet you still cooperated with him to obtain the heavenly key?" Lin Songlong snorted coldly and said, "That's your grudge with him, not mine with him. It's not worth it to delay the mission given by the sect leader because of this. Kuang Xieyue, I'm warning you, you'd better not stir up trouble. Chu Xiu is no longer the same as he was in the past. If you insist on finding trouble with him, you'll be the one to suffer. I don't care if you go crazy on normal days, but this is a mission given by the sect leader. If you still dare to go crazy, I won't forgive you." Kuang Xieyue laughed and said, "Old Lin, don't be so agitated. I'm just curious about how much Chu Xiu has grown in such a short period of time. Also, I have some doubts. Where did the heavenly key from the illusory 6 realms go? Back then, I suspected that the heavenly key had been destroyed during the collapse of the formation. However, later on, I checked the ancient records of the heavenly gates. The heavenly key is an item that can break through the world. It cannot be measured by common sense. The body of the heavenly key can be destroyed, but its power exists forever in the world. It can be attached to anything and it can continue to be used. The old monk from the Sabodhi monastery died, but Chu Xiu survived. Do you think that the heavenly key is in Chu Xiu's hands?" Chapter 981. Kuang Xieyue had only speculated that the key was in Chu Xiu's hands. He was just looking for an excuse to convince Lin Songlong. But hearing Kuang Xieyue's words, Lin Songlong only looked at him suspiciously and didn't say anything. If the sky-piercing key had been in Chu Xiu's hands back then, it would have been a great achievement for him to retrieve it. At this moment, the scene of Yi Xiaonan fighting with Su Ci and the others was transmitted to them. Feeling Yi Xiaonan's powerful strength, Lin Songlong and Kuang Xieyue's expressions changed slightly. After a while, Kuang Xieyue murmured, "Old Lin, do you think Yi Xiaonan's strength has already caught up to the sect master?" Lin Songlong snorted coldly and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? In this world, Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji have already left. Who else can be the sect master's match? No matter how strong Yi Xiaonan is, he can't be on par with the sect master. He doesn't deserve to be on par with the sect master." Kuang Xieyue opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He had never doubted the sect master's strength. But in the entire martial world, there was no strongest, only stronger. Kuang Xieyue wanted to say that person's name but didn't. Among the 9 heavenly generals of Elysium, they were naturally loyal to Elysium. Those who weren't loyal couldn't become heavenly generals. But the problem was that Lin Songlong's loyalty to Elysium's sect master was no longer as simple as that. It had even risen to the level of worship. He worshipped Jun Wuxian like a god. If he said that person's name, Lin Songlong would probably turn hostile on the spot. Lin Songlong didn't say anything else. They were already fighting. Who knew what they had found? Would there be a key among them? They couldn't fall behind. At this time, the place where Yi Xiaonan and the others were fighting had already become a vast swamp. Only the underground river in the sky had already healed under some strange rule. There was no water flowing backwards, but the ground had already been submerged. Only some higher ground could be seen above the water. At this moment, Su Ci and the others were not the only ones besieging Yi Xiaonan. Dong Wang Tai and the rest of the bright demons were also resisting the attacks of the righteous cultivators. Moreover, it was not only the people from the righteous Dao. Some of the devil Dao rogue cultivators who had parted ways with Chu Xiu were also trying to break through the blockade of the moon-worshipping cult in the melee and grab the things inside. Seeing this scene, Chu Xiu suddenly felt a lot more comforted. Previously, he had thought that Han Xiuhong and Situ Chi had dared to provoke him because he was not powerful enough. But from the looks of it now, it wasn't because of him. Everyone was greedy, and in the face of greed, fear and even death could be diluted. Everyone looked behind Dong Huang Tai and the others, wanting to see what they were protecting. Behind Dong Huang Tai and the others was a high platform. To be more precise, it should be the peak of a tall mountain. However, the mountain was submerged, so what was exposed above the water was only a high platform. Countless demonic pattern chains wrapped around the high platform. Just like the deep pool that Chu Xiu had encountered before, these demonic pattern chains were also formed by the heavens and earth. However, the number of chains was 100 times that of the deep pool. Countless demonic pattern chains were densely packed together, and the demonic qi was concentrated to the extreme. It was simply terrifying. The place where the dragon vein converges. Wei Shuya suddenly blurted out. Chu Xiu was stunned. Old Wei, you're also proficient in feng shui? Wei Shuya shook his head. Of course I don't know this thing, but the terrain here is exactly the same as the description of the holy church's terrain left behind in the ancient records. Although this is a dragon vein, it is not the dragon vein of an imperial court. Instead, it is the dragon vein of the demon dragon, which contains extremely evil demonic qi. The peak of the holy church is where the dragon vein converges, so it condenses the rootless sacred flame that can refine a true god. The power of the demon dragon's dragon vein in the primitive devil cave is even greater. What did it condense? Everyone looked at the peak of the dragon vein. What Yi Xiaonan and the others were fighting over should be the thing on the peak. However, the thing condensed on the peak of the dragon vein was a little strange. Almost no one present could recognize what it was. One of the things was a stone knife. To be precise, it was a blade-shaped stone that emitted an astonishing demonic qi. The other was an irregular black stone that was suspended in midair. It was covered with black demonic patterns. Seeing this black stone, Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed. He had already recognized it. This black stone was exactly the same as the sky-piercing key. Of course, it was not accurate to say that it was exactly the same. The patterns on the black stone were black demonic patterns, but there was only a small difference. These two things did not attract too much attention. In fact, it was the last thing that attracted everyone's attention. The last thing was a strange black crystal. Its surface was crystal clear and incomparably smooth. It was like an eye. The moment everyone saw the demonic crystal, they were stunned, as if they were deeply immersed in it. Everyone in the demonic path knew this thing. To be precise, all the demonic path experts had heard of it. This thing was called the Khanate demon seed. It was said to be an eye of the myriad demon ancestor. It contained the power of the demonic path and was abnormally powerful. Before, Dugu Weiwei had one. If anyone in the Kunlun devil cult made a great contribution, they would be qualified to cultivate in front of the demon seed for a day. This item could be said to be a true supreme treasure of the demonic path. Even if one were to cultivate in its surroundings for a single day, they would be able to obtain countless benefits, let alone directly ingest and refine it. Although the crowd did not know why Dugu Weiwa did not refine it, they did not know why. However, this Khanate demon seed was a little strange. It was a little too small. It was only the size of a thumb. It was said that the demon seed that Dugu Weiwei had was the size of a palm. At this moment, these things were surrounded by many demonic patterns. The natural demonic patterns had already condensed into a formation, actively protecting the three things from being destroyed by the power of the outside world. Chu Xiu touched his chin. He seemed to have guessed what was going on. This place was indeed a land of treasures. Countless treasures of the devil path could be condensed here, including the Khanate devil bead that was condensed in the strange pond. It was also a type of devil seed, but it was not as powerful as the one before. Dugu Weiwei had come to this place in the past, so all the good things should have been looted by Dugu Weiwei. However, Dugu Weiwei was still quite careful. He did not directly destroy the root of the problem. Instead, he preserved the demonic dragon's dragon vein. Within 500 years, the demonic aura condensed and formed another demon seed, but it was much smaller than before. However, what was going on with the blade-shaped stone and the thing that was almost no different from the sky-piercing key? Did Dugu Weiwei not take it away last time, or did it appear in the past 500 years? At this moment, Lu Jianghu transmitted his voice to Chu Xiu, "Kid, if there is a chance to fight for it later, it would be best if you can get the demon seed. If you can't get the demon seed, go for the stone knife. There will be a surprise." Chu Xiu was stunned. Surprise? What surprise? Lu Jianghu chuckled and said, "I dare to guarantee that no one in the pugilistic world knows about this except for me. You have all heard of the knife, listen to the spring rain at night that the sect master brought out from the primitive devil cave. However, think about it. Even if the power of heaven and earth could really give birth to a knife, how could it be so exquisite and have a poem on it? When the sect master brought out, listen to the spring rain, from the primitive devil cave, it was actually a stone knife like this. After returning to the saint sect, the sect master used the rootless sacred flame to refine all the stones on the outside of the stone knife, revealing the blade inside. After the sect master meticulously carved it, it became the current demon knife, listen to the spring rain. However, the sect master is good at everything, except for his poor naming skills. Listen to the spring rain was named by the red lotus demon venerable. A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. In that case, listen to the spring rain was actually formed by heaven and earth, and this stone knife had the same origin as listen to the spring rain. At this time, with the arrival of Chu Xiu and the others, the battle had already begun to escalate. Although Chu Xiu had yet to enter the battlefield, Ling Yunzi had already led the people of the Chunyang Dao sect and charged forward. Su Yun and the others also joined the battle. Yi Xiaonan's expression did not change in the face of so many people's attacks, but the moon blades around him danced more and more rapidly. One moon blade forcibly resisted the sword hut's 10,000 sword catalogue and the former sword Saint Yi Feiyu's broken sword. Chu Xiu looked around and furrowed his brows. In the end, he shouted in a low voice, "Attack!" At present, the entire battlefield was in a mess. Schemes and methods of breaking out of this situation were already useless. The only thing left was to fight. Only the heavens knew who would be able to seize the treasure in the end. Even with the strength that Yi Xiaonan had revealed, he didn't dare say who would emerge victorious in the end. Although Yi Xiaonan had the strength to fight many alone, the moon-worshipping cult and the entire bright demon lineage had limited strength. It was obvious that they could not hold on much longer. However, with the addition of Chu Xiu's side, the entire situation changed. Something like a demon seed was useless to the warriors of the righteous path, but to the warriors of the demonic path, it was the most precious of all treasures. As the number one person of the demonic path, Yi Xiaonan's strength was already shocking enough. If he refined the demon seed, everyone was afraid that he would become the second Dugu Weiwei. As for Chu Xiu, although his strength was far inferior to Yi Xiaonan's, Chu Xiu's potential was too shocking. Everyone was afraid that Chu Xiu would become the second Yi Xiaonan. In the Jianghu, Yi Xiaonan and the moon-worshipping cult were already enough to prevent the demonic path from losing. If Chu Xiu was added, the situation that the righteous path had spent 500 years suppressing the demonic path might change again. Thus, Su Ci, who was fighting with Yi Xiaonan, could only sigh and turn to attack Shang Tianliang. At the same time, he sent a group of people to deal with Chu Xiu. However, at this moment, Kuang Xieyue and Lin Sanglong appeared at the edge of the battlefield. In an instant, they attracted everyone's attention. Chapter 982. The divine generals of the Elysium were experienced, but even Lin Sanglong and Kuang Xieyue could not help but be speechless. At this moment, when the righteous martial artists saw the people from Elysium coming, they frowned and looked worried. The scene was chaotic enough, but the people of the Elysium had gotten involved. Some people did not know how to deal with it. This was because no one knew what the attitude of the Elysium was. The Elysium was neither righteous nor demonic, but the people of the Elysium were proficient in demonic techniques. If they obtained the demonic seed, no one knew whether it would be a good or bad thing. Lin Sanglong and Kuang Xieyue also saw the thing that looked like the key to heaven. Their eyes lit up. The leader's analysis was right. There was indeed a key to heaven here. At this time, Su Yun said in a low voice, "The two of you from the Elysium, do you also want the thing in the primitive demon's cave?" If other warriors questioned the divine generals of the Elysium like this, Lin Sanglong and Kuang Xieyue would definitely ignore them. However, Su Yun was in the top 3 of the Wind Cloud list, the first seat of the Great Light Temple. Moreover, Su Ci was here. No matter how arrogant Lin Sanglong and Kuang Xieyue were, they would not offend the Great Light Temple at this time. Hearing this, Lin Sanglong said in a low voice, "Master Su Yun, our purpose here is different from yours. The Elysium has not participated in the battle between the righteous and demonic forces for a long time. You should know our attitude. We don't want the demonic seed, and the Elysium is not interested in it. We just want the other stone." Hearing that the people of the Elysium did not want the demonic seed, the righteous warriors present were relieved. After all, in their opinion, the demonic seed was the most important to them. As long as the demonic seed was kept in the hands of the righteous martial artists and sealed by them, there would be no problem. Seeing that Su Yun wanted to say something, Lin Sanglong said first, "Master Su Yun, the Elysium has never had any conflicts with the sects in the underworld. The Elysium has its missions, and you have your pursuits. Both sides mind their own business. Some things are better not knowing, isn't it?" Hearing Lin Sanglong say this, Su Yun did not continue to ask. Many people did not know what the Gate of Heaven had been doing all these years. They only knew that the Gate of Heaven seemed to be searching for something. However, the Elysium rarely clashed with some of the big sects in the Jianghu. Even if they sometimes did not follow the rules, because of the Elysium's own strength, no one dared to provoke them. It was not worth it to provoke such a powerful colossus like the Elysium for some unknown reason. However, at this moment, Kuang Xieyue suddenly looked at Chu Xiu and sneered, "Chu Xiu, they say that one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later on. I really didn't expect that the old monk from the Sabodhi monastery wouldn't be able to kill you." Chu Xiu's expression was calm as he said, "I never thought that you would actually dare to appear in front of me again. Do you really think that I won't dare to kill you just because you're from the Elysium?" As he spat out the last word, Chu Xiu's face was full of killing intent. Kuang Xieyue had really wanted to kill Chu Xiu back in the illusionary realm 6. At that time, although Chu Xiu was not as strong as he was now, he was still the number 1 among the younger generation. In the end, he was still chased by Kuang Xieyue and ended up in a miserable state. Chu Xiu had never been a magnanimous person. On the contrary, he could hold a grudge for a lifetime. When would there be an end to revenge? When he died, or when his enemy died, the grudge would be over. Previously, Chu Xiu had told Lin Songlong that he would go to the Elysium one day to kill Kuang Xieyue. At that time, Chu Xiu was not just talking about saving face. He was really confident that he would eventually have that kind of strength. But that was in the future, not now. Therefore, as long as Kuang Xieyue did not appear in front of him, Chu Xiu would naturally not cause trouble for him. Going to the Elysium now was purely courting death. But who would have thought that Kuang Xieyue would dare to appear in front of him? Kuang Xieyue's lips curled into a sinister smile. He said, "Kill me? Chu Xiu, you are the most courageous person I have ever met in my life. For so many years, almost no Elysium divine generals have fallen outside. You dare to kill them, but can you kill me? Oh? No one has fallen outside? That's true, because the most people you have ever lost was when you were massacred by Dugu Weiwei at your doorstep. Your entire family was almost wiped out." Chu Xiu said these words lightly. Kuang Xieyue's and Lin Songlong's faces darkened. This matter was a taboo in the entire Elysium. For so many years, this was the most tragic loss that the Elysium had ever suffered. They were almost wiped out. However, Lin Songlong pulled Kuang Xieyue and transmitted his voice. "What did I tell you just now? Don't cause trouble. If you want to provoke Chu Xiu, hand over the heavenly key first." Lin Songlong had always prioritized the Elysium's mission. Before the mission, he did not want to cause any trouble. However, once Kuang Xieyue went crazy, he did not care about the mission. He did not care about what Lin Songlong said. Instead, he stared at Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Kid, is the heavenly key in your hands? If you obediently hand over that thing to me, I will temporarily forget about the enmity between us. Today, I will not come looking for trouble with you again." However, if you don't hand it over, don't blame me for being rude. Upon hearing this, Chu Xiu was shocked. How did Kuang Xieyue know that the heavenly key was in his hands? No one should have known about this. Even though Chu Xiu had used the heavenly key to bring people from the merchant city back from the green capital, Shang Tianliang did not know what was going on. Chu Xiu did not expect that Kuang Xieyue had just casually made up an excuse to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. A murderous look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. "Rude? I want to see how rude you can be." As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, he temporarily gave up fighting with the righteous people and rushed straight towards Kuang Xieyue. Seeing that Chu Xiu had taken the initiative to rush towards him, Kuang Xieyue's eyes revealed a crazy murderous look. He had always been the kind of person who would go crazy when faced with people. For so many years, he had never suffered such a big loss in the hands of anyone. Last time, he had suffered a loss in the hands of Chu Xiu. Originally, Chu Xiu was already dead, so he naturally would not stoop to the level of a dead man. However, who would have thought that Chu Xiu was not dead? This gave Kuang Xieyue a feeling that he had been played. This feeling was very unpleasant, so he wanted to take this opportunity to turn Chu Xiu's fake death into a real one. As the blood-colored moonlight fell, the scimitar in Kuang Xieyue's hand seemed to tear the world in front of him apart. The surrounding demon qi was even absorbed by the power of the scimitar. With a layer of black demon qi, the scimitar's power increased by 30%. In the martial arts of the Heavenly Gates warriors, there was no distinction between the righteous and the demonic, only the strong and the weak. As long as the power was strong enough, it did not matter what the righteous or demonic path was. As long as it was suitable for them, they could practice it. Looking at Kuang Xieyue's scimitar, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a look of mockery. In the past, in the illusory 6 realms, he had been chased miserably by Kuang Xieyue. He had even had to use some tricks to escape. But things were different now. Chu Xiu was no longer the Chu Xiu of the past, and he, Kuang Xiewe, had not made any progress. The sea-breaking scimitar came crashing down. That violent gang qi seemed to tear the world apart. Wherever it passed, the water of the underground river on the ground was completely torn apart. Even the space was distorted. The 7 limits were evolved from extreme power. This scimitar was also the scimitar that could best reflect Chu Xiu's current power. The sea-breaking scimitar collided with Kuang Xiewe's scimitar. In an instant, a powerful force exploded, as if the sky was collapsing. Countless underground river water exploded, and the moonlight also melted. The expression on Kuang Xiewe's face instantly changed from madness to shock. He was extremely shocked. He had never expected that Chu Xiu's strength would grow to such an extent in such a short period of time. He couldn't take this saber strike. Kuang Xiewe's impression of Chu Xiu's power came from Lin Songlong. Lin Songlong had cooperated with Chu Xiu last time. After returning, he naturally mentioned this matter to Kuang Xiewe. At that time, Chu Xiu had just stepped into the real fire refinement realm. Kuang Xiewe was confident that he would not be afraid of Chu Xiu with his own power. But now, Chu Xiu had stepped into the real fire refinement realm. Few people knew about this. Before coming to the primitive devil cave, Chu Xiu had only sparred with Shang Tianliang. Even if others knew, it would be useless. Because Kuang Xiewe did not have the opportunity to inquire about Chu Xiu's strength. He had followed Lin Songlong this time with ulterior motives. He would not tell Lin Songlong the truth if he was not there. How would he have the time to investigate Chu Xiu's information? After the two collided, Chu Xiu stood with his scimitar. The powerful demonic energy around him was like a whirlpool. The surrounding underground river water even formed a huge whirlpool around him. However, it was still 10 feet away from him. Not a single drop of water fell on him. On the other hand, Kuang Xiewe was in an incomparably sorry state. He was directly blasted into the water by the power of Chu Xiu's scimitar. After a few breaths, he reappeared. Gang energy erupted around him, parting the water. His eyes were still filled with disbelief. The other righteous martial artists saw that Chu Xiu and the divine general of Elysium were engaged in a fierce battle. They all breathed a sigh of relief. Guarding against one Yi Shaonan was already difficult enough. Guarding against another Chu Xiu made them feel even more pressured. Now that Chu Xiu and the divine general of Elysium were engaged in a fierce battle, this was a good thing. In any case, they did not have an intuitive understanding of the divine general of Elysium. As long as the other side was not from the demonic lineage, it would be fine. Seeing that Chu Xiu was about to attack, Lin Songlong immediately blocked in front of Chu Xiu. He said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, we did not come for you this time. Kuang Xiewe's madness has nothing to do with the divine general. It is just a misunderstanding. Don't take it seriously. You retreat. I will block him. You take your demonic seed. My Elysium will take what we want. We will not fight." Chapter 983. Lin Songlong was still considered to be more rational. To him, the Heaven's Gate had no enemies. It was just a mission that belonged to him. Even if the Kunlun demon sect had almost annihilated the Heaven's Gate in the past, that was all in the past. Nothing was more important than retrieving the All-Heaven Key. Kuang Xiewe, that lunatic, had actually provoked Chu Xiu even though he had already warned him. Moreover, Chu Xiu's strength had indeed shocked Lin Songlong. It had only been a short while since they had joined forces to go to the Black Sky Demon cult, but Chu Xiu's strength had already skyrocketed to such an extent. Kuang Xiewe would not have been able to block that attack just now. If it had been him, the result would probably have been the same. Looking at Lin Songlong, who was standing in front of him, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Lin Songlong, do you think I'm an idiot?" One was playing the good cop, while the other was playing the bad cop. Their teamwork was very good. You said that the Elysium has no intention of becoming enemies with me. Fine, I have the intention of becoming enemies with the Elysium. Lin Songlong, I won't stop you if you want to snatch that thing, but Kuang Xiuyue must die today. Lin Songlong's expression immediately changed. Chu Xiu, don't be so shameless. Although Lin Songlong did not like Kuang Xiuyue and even complained that he had gone crazy and ruined things, he was still a divine general of the Elysium. In front of him, Chu Xiu actually wanted to kill a divine general of the Elysium. Even if Lin Songlong did not want to become enemies with Chu Xiu, he could not tolerate such a thing. Chu Xiu's expression was abnormally calm as he clenched the unique heavenly blade in his hand. However, everyone could see the crimson killing intent in his eyes. I gave you face, but you don't want it? It seems like you really think that I'm joking. Do you really think that I don't dare to kill someone from the Elysium? If I, Chu Xiu, want to kill someone, the only difference is whether they die sooner or later. In any case, they will all die in the end. Those who were familiar with Chu Xiu knew that Chu Xiu really wanted to kill when they saw his current appearance. At this time, it was useless for anyone to stop him. Although Chu Xiu was able to maintain his rationality most of the time, no one would be able to stop him if he were to really go crazy. Wei Shuya, who was fighting fiercely with the others, also changed his expression. He secretly sent a voice transmission to Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu, boy, calm down. If you want to kill the people of the Elysium, you can. When you reach the realm of the former sect leader, even if you destroy the entire Elysium and unite the East and the West Kunlun, it won't be a problem. But if you kill the people of the Elysium now, it will only bring trouble, a lot of trouble." Wei Shuya did not want Chu Xiu to show weakness. However, with Chu Xiu's current state, killing the people from the heavenly gates would not do him any good other than vent his anger. The Elysium had been in the Jianghu for such a long time. Coupled with their arrogant way of doing things, how could they not offend people? However, with the strength of the Elysium and the fact that they had no intention of interfering in the Jianghu, sometimes even if they went too far, those big forces would temporarily tolerate it. At present, for Chu Xiu and the entire diabolism, their biggest enemy was the righteous path. It was not worth it to make enemies with the people of the Elysium at this time. Elder Wei, I understand the principle of tolerating for a while, but I'm not willing to tolerate it. Moreover, taking a step back may not mean that everything will be fine. It may also mean that the other party will be insatiable. The people of the Elysium have been arrogant for such a long time because they know that everyone in the Jianghu will tolerate and give in to them. But today, I, Chu Xiu, do not want to tolerate it, nor do I want to give in. Lu Jianghe, who was at the side, used some secret method to hear the conversation between Chu Xiu and Wei Shuya. He chuckled and said, Chu Xiu's idea is not bad. It suits my temperament. Who cares about the Elysium and the underworld? A force that was almost crippled by the sect leader 500 years ago still dares to be so arrogant. When the sect leader of the Elysium was plucked off his head and kicked it like a ball, why didn't anyone dare to make an enemy of the Elysium? Wei Shuya glared at Lu Jianghe. This hall leader of the Blood Demon Hall 500 years ago was indeed as unreliable as the rumors said. Could it be compared to 500 years ago? If the Ima clan had the power of the Kunlun devil cult 500 years ago, they would not care about the entire Jianghu, let alone the Elysium. However, Wei Shuya sighed and did not try to persuade Chu Xiu again. This was Chu Xiu's character. If Chu Xiu thought so much about everything and was overcautious when doing things, no matter how talented Chu Xiu was, it would be useless. Being tough once was impulsive, but being tough 10 times was tyrannical. When you could put on an extremely tough attitude in front of everyone, you would be invincible in the world. The Kunlun devil cult in the past was like this. What was tolerance? What was apprehension? What was the big picture? Just kill them all. At this moment, Chu Xiu had already made his move. Just as he had said before, it would have been fine if Kuang Xieyue had not appeared in front of him. However, since he dared to appear in front of him and say those ridiculous words, he would send him on his way today. Without any probing or hesitation, Chu Xiu's saber slashed down. The space seemed to freeze. Everything in the path of the saber was cut in half. Even a drop of water was perfectly cut in half. The ethereal slash was unusually magnificent. It was so magnificent that it did not seem like a demonic saber at all. Everything around him condensed into a picture scroll. Under that saber intent, Lin Songlong roared angrily. A black dragon coiled around his body. In an instant, an absolute power erupted. Dragon roar to the 9 heavens. Layers of powerful black gang qi drifted out along with the dragon's roar. Finally, the picture scroll was torn apart. Lin Songlong's hands were like dragon claws as he forcefully resisted Chu Xiu's ethereal slash. However, the next moment, the gang qi on his dragon claws began to shatter. Even his internal organs were eroded by the saber intent. He could not help but groan. Kuang Xieyue. What are you still looking at, you idiot? Hurry up and make your move. Lin Songlong hated Kuang Xieyue to the core. He hated him even more than he hated Chu Xiu. If this lunatic had not followed him and caused trouble, he would have already successfully taken the heavenly key and left. Just now, Su Yun and the other big shots of the righteous path had given him face. As long as the Elysium sect did not participate in the fight between the righteous path and the demonic path, they could easily leave. In the end, Kuang Xieyue's interference had angered Chu Xiu. Now, not to mention whether they could get the heavenly key, it was still unknown whether they could stop Chu Xiu. Kuang Xieyue was indeed in a daze. To be precise, he was still in a state of shock. He seemed to be unable to accept that Chu Xiu had already grown to such a level in such a short period of time. It was a level that he could not help but be astonished. Hearing Lin Songlong's cursing, Kuang Xieyue finally reacted. Moreover, he did not argue with Lin Songlong. Instead, he hurriedly picked up the scimitar in his hand and slashed down. Moonlight bloomed in the saber radiance. It even absorbed the powerful demonic aura around it and formed a demonic moon. It could be said that there were no weaklings among the Elysium divine generals. Although it was impossible for the strength of every Elysium divine general to reach the level of Donghuang Tai or Su Yun, at the very least, their strength had to be ranked in the upper class or even the peak among warriors of the same level. However, with Chu Xiu's current strength, he was probably not far off from saying that he was the number 1 person below the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. As he watched the saber slash down, the demonic Buddha Dharma appeared behind Chu Xiu. The Buddhist Dharma was vast. A Buddhist seal fell, and a powerful Buddhist light suppressed everything. In an instant, it completely suppressed Kuang Xieyue's saber. The demonic might was monstrous. With a punch, endless world-extinguishing fire burned. The water of the underground river that was still flowing on the ground evaporated in an instant when it came into contact with the world-extinguishing fire. 1 demon and 1 Buddha. The 2 completely different powers merged into one. The power that could be produced made everyone's expression change. Kuang Xieyue formed seals with his hands. Moonlight radiated around his body as he struggled to resist the corrosion of the world-extinguishing fire. However, he could not imagine what kind of monster Chu Xiu was. It had only been a short time, and his strength had actually increased to such a level. Lin Songlong gritted his teeth. The degree of shock he felt was no less than Kuang Xieyue's. After all, he had just fought with Chu Xiu. Kuang Xieyue, if you don't want to die, then don't hold back. I will help you buy time and use your evil moon saber. Lin Songlong roared. Black dragons coiled around his body as he transformed into a dragon and charged towards Chu Xiu. Lin Songlong's martial arts were also inclined towards close combat. In particular, his dragon incarnation even had the will of a real dragon, which was very terrifying. Because the battle between Yi Xiaonan and the others had shattered the underground river in the sky, the river water had flowed down. The place where everyone was now was almost a swamp. The dragon moved through the clouds and brought down the rain. In this environment, Lin Songlong's strength had increased compared to the outside world. The black dragon crossed the sea and stepped on the boundless waves as it attacked Chu Xiu. The dragon's tail swept downwards. Everywhere it passed, even the water droplets were forcibly blasted into a cloud of mist by the powerful force. Chu Xiu's body was covered in golden and silver inner force fire. In terms of physical strength, besides Qinqing Di and a few others, Chu Xiu was fearless. The Dharma form behind him had completely transformed into a three-eyed great black heavenly demon. Endless world-extinguishing fire bloomed and instantly evaporated the boundless waves. The water vapor spread for several miles. It was as if one was in a thick fog, making it difficult to see one's figure clearly. With a low roar, Chu Xiu's fist landed. The inner force fire mixed with the boundless world-extinguishing fire was blasted out with the fist force of the mountain and sea fist scripture. In an instant, a dragon's roar resounded through the world. The dragon's stellar energy tail was directly shattered by Chu Xiu's fist. Lin Songlong roared angrily. His figure fell straight down amidst the encirclement of the azure dragon. His fists, palms, legs, and feet smashed towards Chu Xiu in a frenzy. Every move had the ferocity of a dragon in the wild. But every time his fists and palms collided, Chu Xiu's world-extinguishing fire would burn off a layer of his stellar energy. At the same time, his powerful strength also penetrated deep into his bones. When the last punch landed, Lin Songlong's stellar energy shield was directly shattered. His figure was blasted hundreds of feet away. He crashed into a mountain peak above the water, leaving behind a huge pit. Chapter 984. In the eyes of most people, the divine generals of the Elysium were mysterious and powerful. Moreover, to most people, the existence of the unknown was what they feared the most. Therefore, the people of the underworld were very wary of the people of the Elysium. But today, Chu Xiu had sent Lin Songlong flying with a punch. This seemed to make the others think of something. The so-called divine generals of the Elysium were only so. They were very unfamiliar with the divine generals of the Elysium, but they were very familiar with Chu Xiu. Seeing the legendary divine general of the Elysium, Lin Songlong, defeated by Chu Xiu, this layer of fear and respect had long disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Lin Songlong struggled to climb out of the mountain peak. He resisted the urge to spit out blood. Purely in terms of physical strength, Chu Xiu had already surpassed him by too much. Kuang Xieyue. Are you done or not? Following Lin Songlong's shout, a blood-colored crescent moon had already risen from Kuang Xieyue's side. In an instant, countless forces were attracted to it. It was as if a blood-colored moon had appeared in the pitch-black primitive demon's lair. However, Kuang Xieyue's current state was even more demonic. His entire body was shrouded in a layer of thick blood-colored mist. Within his dantian, there was a faint blood-colored glow. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a crescent moon-shaped saber. Every Elysium martialist cultivated a different cultivation technique. Before they became divine generals of the Elysium, they would use the mission rewards they had obtained in the mystic realm to exchange for various ancient cultivation techniques. Therefore, what you would achieve in the future depended entirely on you. Kuang Xieyue's original name was not Kuang Xieyue. His name actually came from an ancient murderous weapon, the evil moon saber. This ancient ominous weapon was said to be the weapon of a great figure of the demonic path in the ancient era. It was stained with countless amounts of blood and slaughter. Ordinary people were unable to use it, so the price to exchange for the evil moon blade was lower than ordinary divine weapons. However, Kuang Xieyue's brain had always been abnormal. Before he became one of the 9 great divine generals, he had actually exchanged for this evil moon saber, refined it with a secret method, and placed it in his dantian, using his own flesh and blood to feed this demonic weapon. This kind of action could be said to be crazy, because if one was not careful, it would cause a backlash. This kind of demon weapon would not recognize a master, nor would it care who it was. Kuang Xieyue had lived for so many years with a ticking time bomb that could take his life at any time. Therefore, although many of the 9 great divine generals didn't like Kuang Xieyue, few of them would really fall out with him. After all, everyone knew his background, and not many people were willing to bicker with such a lunatic. Kuang Xieyue's eyes were already dyed red with blood as he held the blood moon in his hand. You want to keep me here? This was even more absurd than a dream. When I killed you before, that was the same as killing a genius of the demonic path. But if I kill you now, I will be killing a future demonic path overlord. This sense of accomplishment will be even more satisfying than before. As Kuang Xieyue's voice fell, the blood mist around him rose even more violently. This was all formed from his own essence and blood. The huge blood moon smashed towards Chu Xiu. Everywhere it passed, everything between heaven and earth began to distort. The blood moon seemed to be able to distort and absorb anything, and could even transform it into its own power. When the blood moon smashed towards Chu Xiu and arrived in front of Chu Xiu, the blood moon had already expanded a lot. Seeing that Kuang Xieyue had finally made his move, Lin Canglong heaved a sigh of relief. However, his nerves were even more tense. He was afraid that Kuang Xieyue would become even crazier. Among the 9 great divine generals, Kuang Xieyue's strength was not the strongest. At least, Lin Canglong believed that he could completely beat Kuang Xieyue when he was in his normal state. However, this was under the premise that he could beat Kuang Xieyue when he was in his normal state, but he could not defeat the crazy Kuang Xieyue. When Kuang Xieyue went crazy, he simply did not see himself as a human. He would risk his life at every turn. No one was willing to fight with Kuang Xieyue in this state. He was willing to risk his life, but the others were not. The evil moon saber was sealed in Kuang Xieyue's dantian. This demonic saber had already affected Kuang Xieyue's mind. Once he used it, even he could not control himself. Seeing the blood moon crashing towards him, even Chu Xiu had to admit that he seemed to have underestimated the Heavenly Gate's immortal generals. Almost all of them had their own trump cards. Once they risked their lives, this kind of power was enough for Chu Xiu to pay attention to them. Of course, this was just him paying attention. The other party did not have the qualifications to make him risk his life. Facing the blood moon, Chu Xiu formed a seal with both hands. In an instant, the heaven-weeping blood rain descended. He didn't know if it was because he was in the primitive devil cave, but when Chu Xiu used the heaven and earth demon weeping great compassion mantra, it caused an extremely shocking phenomenon. The dark river in the sky began to be torn apart. Waves of ghostly wails resounded throughout the world. Although the dark river was torn apart, it did not flow backwards like before. The black river water in the dark river actually formed a huge demon that was hundreds of feet tall. It stretched half of its body down from the sky and hugged the blood moon in its arms. In the darkness, Chu Xiu even felt a whisper that sounded like a demon god's whispering. Strange scenes flashed in front of his eyes. Vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, ancient demon gods, martial artists who had stepped onto the demonic path, Buddhas who had given birth to mental demons, and all sorts of people and things were the aggregation of all sorts of negative emotions in the world. In the end, they condensed into an invisible and intangible existence. It was like a demon but not a demon, like a god but not a god. It was an existence condensed from the dark side of the world. It was invisible and intangible, but as long as there were demons, it would exist. At this moment, Chu Xiu finally understood. He understood the origin of the heaven and earth demon weeping great compassion mantra. This cultivation method should have come from the primitive devil cave. It could be said that it was formed by the heavens and earth, but it could also be said that it was written by someone. This cultivation method was the condensation of all negative emotions in the world. It was invisible and intangible, without a source or source. Unless there were no more negative emotions in the world, no more resentment, no more killing intent, then it could be eliminated. But this was impossible. Thus, in the primitive devil cave, this force grew stronger and stronger. Finally, it possessed the body of a martial artist that entered the primitive devil cave, leaving behind the heaven and earth demon weeping great compassion mantra. It no longer mattered who the other party was, because he was just a vessel. Because he was a martial artist, the great compassion mantra was a cultivation method. If the other party was a wild beast, then the great compassion mantra would be a vicious beast that brought disaster to the world. If the other party was a weapon, then the great compassion mantra would become a peerless weapon. At this time, in the primitive devil cave, Chu Xiu used the complete version of the devil wailing heaven weeping great compassion mantra. This place was equivalent to the birthplace of the great compassion mantra, which was why such a phenomenon appeared. The water of the underground river condensed into a gigantic demon god, pulling the blood moon into the underground river. In an instant, a wave was set off in the underground river, but soon after, that bit of power was completely extinguished. Kuang Xieyue stood there in a daze. He didn't expect that even though he had used the power of the evil moon blade, it would still be blocked by Chu Xiu. At this time, Lin Songlong roared, "Retreat! Retreat!" At this time, Lin Songlong was able to maintain absolute rationality. When Chu Xiu revealed his heaven and earth demon weeping great compassion mantra, Lin Songlong no longer had the intention to fight with Chu Xiu. It wasn't that Lin Songlong was afraid, but to him, there was no point in fighting to the death in such a place. Since Chu Xiu was here and he couldn't obtain the sky-through key, he would think of another way. At worst, he would lose some face and return to the heaven gate to ask for help. But who would have thought that Kuang Xieyue had already fallen into a state of paranoia and madness? It should be said that he had fallen into this state from the moment he used the evil moon blade. He swore that he would not rest until he killed Chu Xiu. With this kind of paranoia in mind, Kuang Xieyue's eyes were overflowing with killing intent. He actually reached into his abdomen and pulled out an evil scimitar that was stained with his blood. The ancient demon weapon, the evil moon blade. This blade had a great reputation in ancient times. It was basically equivalent to the status of the current demon blade, Ting Chunyu. But in Chu Xiu's opinion, although the evil moon blade was strong, it was inferior to Ting Chunyu. A blade was, after all, a weapon. It was only a good blade in the hands of a warrior. In the current Jianghu, almost everyone knew of Dugu Weiwei, but not everyone knew of the demon blade, Ting Chunyu. That was because in Dugu Weiwei's hands, Ting Chunyu was the true unparalleled demon blade. It was not like the evil moon blade, which had somewhat overshadowed its owner. Kuang Xieyue was like this at the moment. Besides his own personality, the evil moon blade had also influenced him to go all out. Holding the evil moon blade, Kuang Xieyue no longer cared about the injuries on his body. As the blade fell, a dazzling crescent moon appeared in front of everyone. It was a crescent moon formed by extreme madness. Even Yi Shaonan, who was fighting fiercely, could not help but look back at this scene. His crescent blade was even slightly affected, and it released moonlight of its own accord. This ancient demon blade had been nurtured by Kuang Xieyue for dozens of years. With the sacrifice of his flesh and blood, its power was probably not inferior to its peak. That blade seemed to have severed space and time. Chu Xiu had a feeling that the weapon spirit on the blade had already locked onto him. This blade was born with extreme killing intent. Since Kuang Xieyue had locked onto him, this blade would not rest until he was dead. The dark primitive devil's lair was already illuminated by the bright moonlight. Chu Xiu did not dodge. He faced the blade head-on, and the ethereal slash fell. If the evil moon blade seemed to have severed time and space, then the ethereal slash's cold and bright blade light was like it had frozen time and space. Two equally bright blade lights collided. In an instant, mountains were broken and rivers were shattered. Several mountain peaks around the two exploded. The flowing underground river water was completely torn apart by that blade light. Chapter 985. Weapons were closely related to warriors. Although Chu Xiu had always believed that the strongest would always be warriors and that weapons were always subservient, he had to admit that a sufficiently powerful weapon could sometimes turn the tide of a battle. Just like the Huangfu family patriarch, who was about to be buried, he was able to fight a few rounds with Chu Xiu using the demon spear crimson handle. However, the one holding the evil moon blade was not the Huangfu family patriarch, but divine general Kuang Xieyue. It had to be said that this attack had exceeded Chu Xiu's expectations. He glanced at the unique heavenly blade in his hand and saw that there was another nick on it. The heavenly war case was a divine weapon that was compatible with the black tortoise true technique. It was very flexible, but its sharpness was far from enough. When it clashed with the crimson handle previously, there was already a nick on the unique heavenly blade and it was unable to change into other forms. If this happened a few more times, the entire heavenly war case would probably break. Of course, this was not important. Chu Xiu was confident that he could take down Kuang Xieyue before the heavenly war case broke. When a person had fallen to the extent that he was controlled by his weapon, how could he still control his own fate? Given Kuang Xieyue's current state, he would not be able to hold on for long before the evil moon blade completely drained his blood. However, Kuang Xieyue did not think about this at all. His mind was already filled with killing intent. Even when Lin Songlong shouted for him to retreat, he did not seem to hear it. The evil moon blade blossomed with a soaring sharpness. The seemingly resplendent moonlight contained endless blood and the roars of vengeful spirits. Behind Chu Xiu, the Mahakala demon god Dharma idol condensed and an endless amount of apocalyptic flames roared out. Strangely enough, even the apocalyptic flames, which could burn everything, were sliced into two by the sharpness of the evil moon blade. Chu Xiu blocked the attack without any expression on his face. Even though there would be a gap in his unique heavenly blade with every strike, and even he was pushed back more than 30 meters, he could feel Kuang Xieyue's vitality weakening with every strike. Just then, in Chu Xiu's mind, the mental demon that he had trapped suddenly said, "How about we make a deal? Let me out, and I'll help you deal with him. If you continue to fight like this, the divine weapon in your hand will be crippled." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "It's just a divine weapon, I can afford to lose it. I have countless ways to get rid of him, but this is the one that consumes the least energy. A saber in exchange for the life of an Elysium divine general. It's worth it." This heart demon was incomparably strange. Although its thoughts were different from a human's, its ability to think was stronger than some people's. The illusions it created could not be said to be invulnerable, but they could be considered to be perfect. Even a heaven and earth profound understanding expert would be easily trapped within them. Chu Xiu had only brought it out to find a chance to study this thing and see if it could be of any use. Making a deal with it was simply a joke. The inner demon in Chu Xiu's mind laughed and said, "But if I make a move, you can get rid of him now. You won't even need to cripple your saber. I know you're guarding against me, but you don't have to worry. Most of my power is left in the valley. Now that I only have this little bit of power left, I can't threaten you at all. How about this, you don't need to let me out. You just need to open a hole in your mental strength and let me transfer my power to your saber. I'll temporarily replace the weapon spirit and I'll help you get rid of him soon. What do you think?" Chu Xiu did not agree to it directly. Instead, he asked, "Why do you insist on making a move? Do you want to devour his inner demon?" The inner demon said, "This is only one of the reasons. I've been here for so many years and have devoured countless inner demons. There are also many who are stronger than him. What I'm really curious about is what he's like inside. In the eyes of you humans, the world is divided into black and white, and there are good and bad. But in my eyes, there's no such thing. I'm more curious about why these people turn from white to black, from good to bad. He's a madman. I can feel that his mental state is extremely unstable. This is not caused by that saber. So I'm very curious about why he became like this." The inner demon was not a human, so Chu Xiu could not understand its strange thinking. However, it was worth it if he could get rid of Kuang Xieyue quickly. Moreover, as the inner demon had said, Chu Xiu was not afraid of it playing any tricks. Most of the inner demon's power was in the valley. With the current spiritual force and the real fire of internal force, Chu Xiu could completely suppress it. When Kuang Xieyue's saber slashed again, Chu Xiu had already attached the power of the inner demon to the peerless heavenly saber. The next moment, the saber slashed down. A powerful collision exploded, but Kuang Xieyue's eyes showed a trace of confusion. Eastern Qi, Yuxing Street, Great Liang City. This was the biggest brothel in Great Liang City. At this time, Kuang Xieyue was only a 15 or 16-year-old gangster. He looked around the street like a thief to see if there were any fat sheep. He was a pickpocket. To be precise, he was a low-level pickpocket. He only dared to steal from foreigners because he had no backing. If he stole from someone he could not afford to offend, his legs would be broken. Moreover, he was not called Kuang Xieyue, but Kuang Shaoer. He did not know what his real name was. He only knew that his surname was Kuang before he was abandoned by his parents. He had been a waiter in a tea house for a while, so that became his name. Kuang Xieyue scratched his head. He did not know why he could not lift his spirits today. But it did not matter. His goal of stealing one tael of silver had been achieved. He tiptoed to the back door of the biggest brothel in Yuxing Street, Huaihua House. Kuang Xieyue whistled twice, imitating the sound of a partridge. But there was no movement for a long time. Kuang Xieyue was puzzled. What was going on today? At this moment, the back door was opened. A pretty girl, who was about the same age as Kuang Xieyue, appeared in front of him. Seeing the girl, Kuang Xieyue immediately greeted her with a happy face. "Little Red, why did you open the door so late? I stole 3 taels of silver today. Don't worry, I'll be able to help you redeem your freedom in a year's time." Kuang Xieyue was so happy that he did not notice that Little Red looked like she was about to cry. At this moment, a pair of big hands suddenly grabbed his neck and slammed him against the wall. In an instant, Kuang Xieyue's head was already bleeding. "Little brat, you actually dare to come and seduce my people? Are you tired of living?" A voluptuous madam stood behind the door. She looked at Kuang Xieyue, who had been picked up by a big man. She said disdainfully, "A lowly thief. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? How dare you come to Huaihua House to steal someone? A toad like you will never be able to eat swan meat in your entire life. I have already sold Xiao Hong's wedding day to Lord Zheng for 1,000 taels of silver. Fortunately, you haven't ruined Xiao Hong's body. Otherwise, who will pay for my losses?" At this moment, a middle-aged man in silk clothes, as fat as a pig, came over and took Little Red into his arms. Amidst Little Red's screams, he chewed and laughed. "Mother Wang, what are you talking about? I, Zheng, am a man of my word. I said 1,000 taels of silver, so it is 1,000 taels of silver. At worst, Little Red will stay with me for a few more nights. I am not picky about food. Let go of her, let go of her." Kuang Xieyue struggled in the big man's hands. But he was so young. How could he break free from the strong brothel thugs? Mother Wang said disdainfully, beat him up and throw him out. Remember, don't kill him. If you kill him, you will have to give money to those guys in the government. After a quarter of an hour, Kuang Xieyue, who was beaten to death, was thrown onto the street. Compared to the injuries on his body, what hurt more was his heart. Why did he not have money? Why did he not have power? Why? Why? At this moment, there was the sound of footsteps. Kuang Xieyue struggled to raise his head, but he could only see a pair of luxurious purple boots, gilded with dragons. You are not reconciled? You want power? Yes. Kuang Xieyue wanted to say a lot of things, but in the end, he only squeezed out one word. Okay. The man also replied with one word. From then on, Kuang Xieyue was brought into the heavenly gate. He cultivated crazily. He had no friends, no brothers, only cruel competition and killing. He had no talent. His potential was not as good as Lin Songlong's. He was not even as good as Immortal Luo's. He only had one advantage, which was that he dared to risk his life. Others were cultivating, but he was risking his life. He knew that merging with the evil moon saber would be harmful, but there was only one benefit. For this benefit, he still did it. Therefore, those who were stronger than him died in the secret realm of the Heavenly Gate, and he became the immortal general of the Heavenly Gate. When he had everything he wanted, when he returned to Great Liang City and flourishing Moon Street, he killed those who had humiliated him in the past. Even though some of them had died of old age, he still slaughtered their entire families. He saw Little Red, but the Little Red from back then was already dead. The one who was alive was the new madam of Huaihua House, Mama Red. Little Red, who was forced to sell herself, became the one who forced others to sell themselves. Kuang Xieyue killed her. He could not bear to see the person he loved become like this. But before she died, she saw Kuang Xieyue's face, which he had deliberately covered up. She smiled and said, "Brother. Little heir." "No!" Kuang Xieyue roared. In an instant, the whole street was destroyed. Even the people of the Eastern Qi royal family were alarmed. At this moment, his heart felt like it had died. He looked down and saw that there was a long saber stuck in his chest. Flourishing Moon Street disappeared. What appeared in front of him was only blood. The other end of the long saber was in Chu Xiu's hand. He said lightly, "You are very pitiful. From the moment you killed her, little heir Kuang was already dead. The only one left alive is a madman named Kuang Xieyue. You are living in so much pain. Killing you is also a kind of release for you." The long saber was pulled out, and Kuang Xieyue's life instantly disappeared. But at this moment, there was no hatred on his face. There was only a look of relief. "Little Red, I am coming for you." You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.